Seeing as we have a quorum and it's 6:32, I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Bloomington Common Council to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rallo?
Here.
Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Stossberg?
Here.
Daly?
Here.
Zulik?
Here.
And Desari?
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I want to start off this meeting by recognizing that March is Women's History Month, and applaud all the women up here on the stage right now. Recognizing that International Women's Day is March 8th, which I believe is Saturday, and the Women's History Luncheon for Bloomington is Thursday, March 27th. So if you're interested in going to that, it's usually an interesting event. You can buy tickets for that through the website. Secondly, I want to recognize that the Bloomington Police Department lost one of their own last week with the passing of Officer Joe Kreider. Officer Kreider was a 25-year veteran of the department. During his time with BPD, he served as a field training officer, a member of the Critical Incident Response Team, Honor Guard, Dive Team, Patrol Sergeant, and a Detective Sergeant. And I would appreciate it if everybody could join me in a moment of silence to recognize his service to the city of Bloomington. Thank you. If you would please keep his family, coworkers, and friends in your thoughts. As for our meeting tonight, I'll start with the agenda summation. We have 3 sets of minutes for approval this evening, and for council members, the most recent version of those was sent out this afternoon with some small edits. That'll be followed by reports, first from council members, then from the mayor and city offices, where we have a report from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday Celebrations Commission and a report from the Bloomington-Monroe County Human Rights Commission. Then we'll have reports from council committees. I don't believe we have any of those reports tonight. And then we'll have our first period of public comment for items not on the agenda. After that, we will have some appointments to boards and commissions. We will have no legislation for first readings tonight. So we'll go right to legislation for second readings and resolutions. We'll start with Resolution 2025-03 related to a lease agreement related to the Convention Center. And then Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02 to appropriate opioid settlement funds for the Downtown Outreach Grant Program. That'll be followed by Ordinance 2025-08 to reestablish the Cumulative Capital Development Fund, and then Resolution 2025-04 dissolving one standing committee and establishing one standing committee of the Common Council. We'll have a period of additional public comment for items not on the agenda. We'll have a note about council schedule, and then we'll adjourn. So if we want to start with those minutes, that would be great.
I move that the minutes from December 4th, 2024, December 10th, 2024, and December 11th, 2024, as amended in today's updated packet, be adopted.
Second. Great. Are there any questions about the minutes? We can do a voice vote on that tonight. All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. That passes unanimously. On to reports, starting with council member reports. I'll go ahead and start on my left. Councilmember Asari.
No report, thank you.
Councilmember Zulik.
No report, thank you.
Councilmember Daly.
No report, thank you.
Councilmember Rallo. No, thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I have a short report. On Friday, last Friday, the 28th of February, I attended the Indiana Sustainability and Resilience Conference here at the Monroe Convention Center. And that was organized by the Environmental Resilience Institute of IU. And it was a very interesting day, lots of good speakers and panelists and discussions with folks there. I just wanted to highlight one session I went to that was about resilient food system strategies, and I think this is an area where we can do more here in Bloomington. There was a quick presentation of CARAT, Community and Agricultural Resilience Audit Tool, by somebody from Evanston who had used it last year. It is a free open source tool for communities to self-assess how they currently utilize the assets of their local food system to achieve a substantial level of community resilience. So, of course, in today's society, things are very uncertain, and with climate change, we're going to have to relocalize our food networks, and this is a tool where we can get a baseline to gauge where we are to start with and how we can improve. So that's something I'd like maybe to work with city staff on developing here or using that tool here in Bloomington. Another interesting speaker at that session talked about FarmWise Indiana, which is a program of the Environmental Resilience Institute. The goals of FarmWise are expand values-based food procurement strategies of institutional partners. So that's like hospitals, public schools, universities, even jails, other people who procure a lot of food for folks. And increase coordination between Hoosier farmers and institutional buyers, make those connections so that, for example, we can have some local produce in our high school cafeterias. And the third goal is to integrate social responsibility into food purchasing strategies so that we can support sustainable agriculture and not the mega business agriculture that depletes our soils. And Indiana value chain professionals help in this process, and they help localities and farmers to get together to source foods regionally or locally. There are 7 such regional professionals serving different regions in Indiana and 5 that serve the state as a whole. Through this program of the value chain coordinators, we actually started up the Farm Stop, the Rose Hill Farm Stop here in Bloomington several years ago. So we've already benefited from the program, but I think it'd be great to look into if we can do more to connect institutions that procure a lot of food with our local farmers. So that's a brief report from that conference. And then I also have a constituent meeting this Saturday at 11 a.m. via Zoom. And it's in particular for residents in District 1, but everybody in Bloomington is welcome. And you can find that Zoom link on the City Council page, bloomington.in.gov/council.
Great, thank you. And I do have a short report. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the events of last week and protocols related to safety and communication. It was reported that communication with council members related to the Tuesday night incident was less than ideal, and while that is accurate, I want to recognize this as an opportunity to improve communication protocols. Steps have been taken and continue to be taken to make sure that council members are informed of different categories of situations in more timely ways. I want to assure both council members and the community that the safety and security of these chambers, this building, and everyone in them, including city staff and residents, in addition to elected officials, is a priority. As a parent who sends their children to schools where they've been doing active shooter drills since kindergarten, I well know that safety is not guaranteed. All we can do is our best to monitor the situation and have a plan of what to do if the worst were to happen. And I want to thank the officers in chambers here today, the officers patrolling the city, and those who've been monitoring this and other situations. And secondly, kind of as a more personal council member report, thinking in some ways about the state of some things going on federally, I wanted to give the community a report of 5 things that I've done in the last week or 2 related to council. I saw an interesting meme from somebody challenging our representatives to report 5 things that they've done that they think are worthwhile, so I thought that I would start that trend. First of all, I approved the agenda for this evening, and I read the packet for this meeting, which which is valuable and important, even though it's something that you think that everybody should do every week. I responded to multiple constituent inquiries, including through email, telephone conversations, and conversations on the street, which also included reaching out to city staff to clarify my own understandings and to communicate constituent interests to staff. I had a meeting related to progress in the trades district, and I communicated extensively with the office of the mayor, the police chief, with my colleagues, and with council staff. And I did other things too, but those were the top 5. So thank you. Moving on to reports from the mayor and city offices. We have 2 reports this evening. I've been told that between the 2 of them and council member questions, we're going to try to keep it to the 20-minute limit for this section of the agenda. And we're going to start with the report from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday Celebrations Commission. Who is here tonight with that? If you could introduce yourself, and I believe you have a slideshow that is up there already. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Gloria Howell, Chair of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday Celebration Commission. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the commission to present some parts of our 2024 annual report. Tonight we'll reflect on our accomplishments over the past year and share our plans for the future. Our commission currently consists of 6 members who are dedicated to honoring the legacy of Dr. King through activities that celebrate his birthday and promote diversity, inclusivity, and racial equity. I'm very proud to say that our commission has folks who are community members, retirees, folks that work in and around the community, IU students and staff, so it's very diverse in terms of the corners of the community that folks are coming from. The commission organizes and supports programs that commemorate the annual federal holiday, including Dr. King's birthday and the Dr. MLK, we present the Dr. MLK Legacy Award. We also support volunteer service initiatives, such as A Day On, Not a Day Off, and we have worked hard to collaborate with various partners to present events that advance justice, racial harmony, and equal opportunity. In 2024, we achieved several key milestones. For example, we had a successful 2024 Dr. MLK birthday celebration, and we continued and expanded our collaborative participation from local organizations. We had a full commission with all 7 seats filled for the majority of 2024, providing space for fresh perspectives and diverse voices. The commissioners also participated in 3 major city events: Juneteenth, Black E. Brown Festival, and La Fiesta del Otoño, fostering community connections and raising awareness of the commission's work. Looking ahead, we have a lot of exciting plans. We're a small but mighty group, but do a lot. We aim to expand community engagement through tabling at local events and creating engaging activities for children who are attending. We're also excited to be working on 2025 Remembrance Day collaboration and programming. The commission seeks to keep full commission representation this year, and we're hoping to find a great new candidate to fill our 1 vacant seat. We'll be working to build a comprehensive photo archive and revisit efforts to provide the One Community curriculum through partnerships with local libraries, faith communities, and schools. The commission will also love to see the development of a community choir for the 2026 MLK celebration. If you want to sing, let me know. However, we also anticipate some challenges, such as coordination of this said community choir, possible but challenges, and perhaps finding the right partnerships for presenting the one city curriculum. But we're optimistic about the opportunities that they present. So we see the potential for deeper connections with individuals of various ages and communities that exist in Bloomington. We invite you all to join us at our next commission meeting. Your involvement is vital to the success of our initiatives. Please mark your calendars and be a part of shaping the future of diversity, inclusivity, and racial equity within our community. And you can find us at all these locations here. Thank you for allowing me to have this time.
Great. Thank you. Do council members have any questions about this commission's work? Councilmember Zulik?
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. This is a great presentation, and we really appreciate your work.
Thank you, Councilmember Asari.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glow. How can we help?
You can support the commission in lots of ways. One of those is green. So if you would like to, you could make contributions and sponsorships. As you know, you can also attend things, but you said how can you help? So I'm going to say all the ways that you can help. A lot of you know when we start to plan for the 2025 celebration, literally we end one celebration going into the other in terms of planning. And that is funded a lot through the generous contributions of different community partners. So if you're interested, if you have an entity that you think is aligning with the vision and values of the King Commission, we invite you to be a sponsor. Our liaison, Michelle, will be happy to take that information. And the other way that you can support, obviously by attending those events, but what we do as the commission is not just host events, but try to support everybody else's events. So by supporting the other commission's work, by supporting events that I mentioned in my presentation, like Blackie Brown, like Juneteenth celebration, our cultural heritage months, those different things, you can by supporting those things, you're supporting us because those things are aligning with the values of Dr. King. So showing up to our meetings, they're efficient. They're efficient, but also very productive because of the people who work tirelessly to support us. Michelle and Shatoya, especially Shatoya, she makes sure we are very efficient. And so we're about the business, but like I said, we have a small but mighty group. So if you want to come to our commission meetings, obviously they're open to the public. Just see what we're about and get to know the members of the commission and know that our heart really lives in this work and how to make Dr. King not just this figment of the past, but actually actualizing the work and the vision that he had to make our community better. So I would say that those are ways that can support.
Great, thank you. Are there other questions or comments? Okay, I have a question. I also wanted to thank you for being here and also thank everybody on the commission for their work. And I was just kind of wondering at the timing of this report, and this is something that, like, when we changed some of the annual report requirements a couple weeks ago for different boards and commissions, and I can't remember if this one was on there or not. But I'm looking at the 2024 financial review and going, okay, probably the keynote speaker was maybe January of 2024. And I'm wondering if a report at the end of the year makes more sense in terms of, say, making the 2025 report in November of this year instead of waiting until March of next year to make this year's report. And I was just wondering if that would make sense at all. And I don't know if this is a question for you more or if Director Moss might think about that just in terms of when it's most productive in terms of you standing up here and advertising the different things that you do and also reporting to council how expenditures have been made. So I don't know if.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. So to answer your question, some of the commissions do have bylaws where they are required to report at certain points of the year. But I'm not 100% sure on the MLK Commission. Now, depending on their busy season, which with our particular department, each liaison is responsible for different programs. Michelle is the liaison for MLK, so therefore she is also doing the MLK programming, and then falls right next into the Bloomington Volunteer celebration. So timing needs to be precise, but it is an option that we possibly could do this particular commission at the end of the year.
Okay, I was just wondering if that made sense or not, just in terms of the work of the commission and when most of their work is done, and what made sense. So it's up to y'all. Just do whatever works for you.
Okay, I like that.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, thank you again for your report. And then I think we can move on to the report from the Bloomington Monroe County Human Rights Commission. And if you want to state your name for the record, that would be great.
Good evening, council members. I'm Ryan Shaddy, and I'm the chair of the Bloomington Monroe County Human Rights Commission. And I am pleased to present our 2024 annual report for the commission. Today we'll reflect on our accomplishments over the past year and share our plans for the future. Our commission consists of 7 members. Our commission consists of 7 members, with 2 appointed by the Monroe County Commissioners, 2 by the Bloomington City Council, and 3 are appointed by the mayor. Currently, we have 1 vacancy. We are focused on enforcing the City of Bloomington and Monroe County Human Rights Ordinance, educating community members about their rights and responsibilities under civil rights laws, and to advocate for changes in policies and law. In 2024, we worked hard to ensure Bloomington was the most safe, welcoming, and inclusive city in the state of Indiana. This past year, we investigated 12 cases alleging discrimination, and that's based on everything from gender to race and national origin. So those were all investigated over the course of the year. And we responded to over 100 inquiries and complaints. We tabled at the Black Market, MCCSC's International Student Welcome, the ADA Anniversary Celebration, and also Bloomington Pride Fest. I would say our most important success in 2024 was proposing the Safe Haven Resolution for transgender health care to the City Council, for which we are very grateful for you, that the council passed that and supported it, and that was also signed by the mayor. And we are very proud of what we accomplished. In 2025, we will be working to further our mission, regardless of changes in political climate, specifically by supporting vulnerable groups in Bloomington and Monroe County, particularly those communities affected negatively by new legislation. And you will definitely be hearing from us more in the coming weeks and months. Finally, we meet on the 3rd Monday of the month at 5 p.m. in the Hooker Conference Room or virtually on Zoom, and we would love to see you at one of those meetings. We also invite you to share our annual art and essay contest with local students. This year's theme is, how does diversity make our community stronger? And the deadline for submission for those in grades K through 6 is on March 12th. Your involvement is vital. Your involvement specifically is vital to the success of our initiatives, and we thank you for your support and all you do for us.
Great, thank you. Are there comments or questions from council members? Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
Yes, thank you very much for your report. I was wondering, is there any difference in language between the Monroe County Human Rights Ordinance and the City of Bloomington Human Rights Ordinance, or are they basically the same?
Michael? I would defer to city staff on that.
Thanks.
Yes, I'm Michael Smith.
Thank you.
They're very close. They're not exactly the same wording at all, but they're very close. When we redid the ordinance, we aligned it in most ways, yeah.
So all the same protected classes, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, I have one. First of all, I want to thank you for compiling such a thorough listing of all of the calls and complaints that you've gotten. That was really, really interesting to read through. And I kind of noted that the Ellettsville calls were out of your jurisdiction. I'm assuming that that's because they're an incorporated area. Has there been conversation to potentially include them?
There has not been any conversations because they're an incorporated area. We can't do them, or Steinsville, either one. So there haven't been any conversations at this point.
Okay, in theory, could we have a larger coalition? I mean, I guess if you live in Ellettsville and have this kind of an issue, or you have this issue in Ellettsville with an employer, what resources do you have?
Good question. It would depend. So if it was an employment one, they can file directly with the EEOC. In Monroe County, besides Ellisville and Steinsville, we would be responsible as a federal employment practice agency. So we would be the ones who would respond to that. But if it's outside of our area, then you can go directly to the EEOC.
Okay, so that's a state resource then?
Right, and if it is housing, could go to HUD. If it was a civil rights issue of some sort, it could go to the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. So we never leave anybody high and dry. We're always trying to find them the resources that they can use elsewhere too.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you again. I appreciate you being here, and again, I appreciate those reports. And I also want to say, kudos to Director Moss for streamlining these reports in a way that was really, I think, valuable, and it was helpful in terms of reading through the more extensive report in the packet and then having a shorter presentation. And I really appreciate that, and I know a lot of work has gone in at the staff level to make that happen. So thank you. Now I have to get back to my agenda. Council committees, we don't have any reports from council committees, is that correct? Great. Next, we have reports from the public then. So this is our first period of time where you can come to us with an item that is not on the agenda. And I also want to clarify, there was some confusion about this last week. Our guidelines for public comment are a little vague. They just say you can't comment on items that are on the agenda, but there are some agenda items that people can't comment on, for example, the reports that we just heard. So unless there is objection up here, I do want to allow people to just not comment on legislative items, but if there are non-legislative items like these reports that you want to comment on, I will say that that is okay, and we will work toward clarifying our rules for public comment in terms of the items not on the agenda. So during this period of time, you can comment on items not on the agenda or the non-legislative items on the agenda, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record. If you're on Zoom, you can go ahead and raise your hand using the reactions tab or send a chat message to the host. And we have somebody here in chambers. Please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Members of the council, my name is David Keppel, and I'm spokesperson for Bloomington Peace Action Coalition. In 2022, this council did something very important and remarkable. You passed a resolution sponsored by Councilmember Rollo expressing concern about the growing danger of nuclear war and marking Bloomington as one of the national and international network of cities working toward the abolition of nuclear weapons. We in BPAC have a very important event 3 weeks from tonight on March 26th at 7 p.m. Dr. Ira Helfand, who is the winner of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize, will be speaking here at 7 p.m. at First United Church, 2420 East 3rd Street, next to Prompt Care East. And the question will be, can we prevent nuclear war? And what do we need to do to prevent it? There are all kinds of experts and citizens working together with very specific proposals to that end. But unfortunately, the United States is now engaged in a $2 trillion nuclear weapons modernization, replacing every single nuclear weapon in the arsenal and making nuclear war more fightable and, quote, winnable. There are no winners in a nuclear war. Dr. Helfand is a remarkable physician, first instance an emergency care physician who realized that nuclear war is something which has no recovery. The only action is prevention. And so we ask members of the public and anyone else who possibly can to come on March 26th at 7 o'clock to First United Church to hear Dr. Helfand. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that event announcement. Is there anybody on Zoom who's expressed a desire to make a public comment? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to comment on an item not on the agenda? Going once, going twice. All right. Moving on to appointments to boards and commissions. Do council members have any appointment recommendations they would like to make? Council member, sorry.
Team A, interview Team A would like to move that we appoint Sidhu McLeod to seat C2 and the Commission of the Status on Black Males.
I'll second that. Motion and a second to appoint Sidhu McLeod. Are there any questions or comments from council members? All those in favor of the appointment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Do we have other appointments to boards and commissions?
Yes.
Councilmember Daly.
Thank you. Interview Committee Team B would like to appoint for the Community Advisory on Public Safety Commission, Tyler Schaefer to seat C9. And for the Environmental Commission, we would like to appoint Casey Chappell to seat C1 and Adam Futtaker to seat C2.
Thank you. We have appointments. Was that 3 people? 1 for the Community Advisory on Public Safety and then 2 for Environmental Commission?
Correct.
Great. Are there any questions or comments from council members on those appointments? Great. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you so much to those Bloomington community members willing to step up and serve those different roles on commissions. I also have one appointment that I want to discuss. I communicated via email. This is not in the packet, but I believe that people might know what I'm talking about here. The City of Bloomington was accepted into IDEM's Clean Communities program, and as part of that, they are forming a clean team. I sent out an email last month, I believe, asking for a council member volunteer to serve on that clean team. They requested a council volunteer, and Councilmember Piedmont Smith stepped up and said that she was interested in that. So I would like to move that Councilmember Piedmont Smith represent council on the newly formed clean team. Second. Is there anybody else here who wants to serve on that clean team? Are there any questions about that group or questions for Councilmember Piedmont Smith? Great. All those in favor of Councilmember Piedmont Smith serving in this capacity, please say aye. Aye. Wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you to Councilmember Piedmont Smith for stepping up and taking this role on. All right, moving on with our agenda. No legislation for first readings, so we're on to legislation for second readings and resolutions.
I move Resolution 2025-03 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
It's been moved that the clerk read by title and synopsis only. Everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Resolution 2025-03, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bloomington, Indiana regarding acceptance of a transfer of property from the Monroe County Capital Improvement Board, the execution of a lease related to the financing of the Monroe County Convention Center expansion project, and pledging certain revenues to the payment of lease rentals due under such lease. The synopsis is as follows. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Bloomington, Indiana regarding acceptance of a transfer of property from the Monroe County Capital Improvement Board, the execution of a lease relating to the financing of the Monroe County Convention Center expansion project, and pledging certain revenues to the payment of lease rentals due under such lease.
Thank you.
I move Resolution 2025-03 be adopted. Second.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we have Controller McClellan here to present.
Good evening, Council. Controller McClellan. The resolution before you does a lot of things. Just as a brief summary, though, as we all know, this is about the city's portion of the convention center transaction. There are a lot of transactions sort of summarized in this resolution before you tonight, and there are a lot of moving pieces or a lot of parts. We have our experts with us here tonight to help answer questions. Corporation Counsel Margie Rice, of course, Special Counsel Tenley Drescher Rhodes, and Financial Municipal Advisor Jim Treat from Crone Associates. There are documents in your packet to provide information about the preliminary plans and specifications of the project. The lease is in your packet. The resolution is in your packet. There is two slides with the same budget numbers, the cost estimates that you saw in the packet last time. All of these documents have been before you before, but please don't hesitate to ask us any questions for clarification or new information. We appreciate your time that you have taken to learn about this very complicated process. And I'm going to step aside now and let you ask questions, and then we will sort of then we'll let the right expert come up to present to you.
Great, thank you. Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, so part of this resolution has the council affirming that neither the food and beverage tax revenues nor the local income tax revenues backing this lease have been pledged to any other obligations. Is that a true statement?
Yes, that is a true statement. If you might be thinking of the 2022 public safety bonds, and the pledge to those bonds was general revenue, and we do pay that debt service with ED lit revenue. But the pledge, that is a true statement because the legal pledge is any general revenue of the city.
Okay, so does this not include appropriation of lit funds for other purposes, which we have done for this year?
Right, that is correct. That statement doesn't say that you can't appropriate those funds in your annual appropriation process. It means it's not pledged to a bond.
Okay, so the verb pledge means it's
yes,
bond.
It's a legal,
okay.
Yeah, it has a specific meaning, yes.
And another direct question result of coming from the text itself. The resolution requires that we determine that the rental of the leased premises is fair and reasonable. Mm-hmm. Could I just get a confirmation from our financial advisor with respect to that it is fair and reasonable as far as the lease payments?
Of course. Thanks, Jim.
Jim Treat with Cronin Associates. And in a transaction like this, it's not what you typically think of as a lease rental, like a usage lease payment. It's really related to the financing. So it's the numbers that are the lease that create the lease payment in the final lease once it's amended are based on the debt service for the bonds that you issue to finance the facility. So that's what we're opining on, is that that is a fair payment for the financing of the bonds and the project. Does that make sense?
So basically we're saying that the financial plan is reasonable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to follow up on one of the things that Controller McClellan said when Councilmember Piedmont Smith asked. You referenced the public safety bond and how that bond is pledged from the general fund, but it's being paid out of lit funds?
The pledge is any general revenue of the city.
And so lit funds count as general revenue?
Yes, lit funds are a general revenue. Property tax is property tax, and other things are called general revenue.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions?
Yeah,
Councilmember
and Jim
Asari?
could help clarify.
I think I understand the confusion. One of the reasons why that the city and many other municipalities have gone with a general revenue bond, because it's one of the few exceptions to your 2% debt limit. So it is not subject to the 2% based on your assessed value debt if it's a general revenue pledge rather than a specific revenue stream pledge. It's just how the statute's written. So that's why the city and many others typically use a general revenue bond. So they specifically commit to paying. It's like a signature loan. You're committing to pay it, but you're not identifying a specific revenue source. You're giving yourself the option of using any revenue source.
But by not identifying that, it doesn't count toward debt limit stuff? Wait,
Correct.
what?
Right.
So in theory, you could just ring up a whole lot of debt under that category?
Well, you have to be able to show that you can afford it to pay it back by some source, but it doesn't count as part of the 2% debt limit.
Okay, interesting.
You know, like your GO bonds do, that you're aware of. That's part of your 2% debt limit. It's one of the reasons why you do a lease rental bond for a transaction this size, because you wouldn't be able to cover it in your 2% debt limit with your other debt if it was counted towards. So lease rental bonds are one of the exceptions. General revenue bonds, your utility revenue bonds aren't part of the 2%, and TIF bonds that are just straight TIF with no backup do not count toward that. So,
okay, thank you.
just as a little learning, for the council.
There's a lot to learn in this whole category
There's a lot
of
here.
things.
Yeah.
Councilmember Asari, did you have a question?
Maybe a question for both of you. And this, I think we had the last time that you presented on this, I think we asked some questions along this line. But some of this is built off of projections, both of the state of the economy, usage of the convention center, et cetera. And I know that we've discussed, but I'd like to sort of confirm again in this setting that we feel like the projections that we're making, are they conservative? Are they aggressive? Are they hopeful? And particularly, so much is changing in very short periods of time currently in the country. So, what sort of happens when there's a big sort of economic downturn or, et cetera? And similarly, like what happens if like the hotel doesn't get built, for example? Right.
So the pledge of food and beverage revenue is, now the word's escaping me. We didn't build any growth into our food and beverage revenue, so it's conservative. That's a word that I couldn't say. The food and beverage revenue growth that we're pledging with, and that we're doing our cash flow with, is conservative. We didn't build any growth into that revenue, and our ED Lit backup pledge is also a conservative estimate, and we built in a safety net for downturns in the economy with a very healthy debt reserve. The holdback for debt reserve. I don't know why I can't think of words right now. Yes. Yeah, the debt service stability fund. And so that is another way that we're sort of hedging for economic downturns.
Excellent.
I have another follow-up on that. How insufficient would fab tax have to end up being before we'd had to tap into lit funds to, like, how badly would it have to crash?
The debt service reserve fund is, I think, a full year of debt service. So we would have to have it would have to go down to zero for a year, which or it would just have to be, I don't know how many, I haven't done the calculations of how long, 75% of food and beverages would last, but we have a full year of debt service in reserve. So that would be as if we got nothing for a full year.
There is another item that I would consider reserved too that I want to mention to the council tonight. It's not really in the report specifically, but you will earn interest earnings on your bond proceeds, the construction fund, probably a couple $1 million, I would say. That is not factored into the budget for either the project. It could be used for the project. It could be used for debt service. But because of that, you really have another $2 million of safety net if there's an economic downturn or any other reason. So you have quite a bit safeguards built into this transaction.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from council members? Councilmember Rallo?
Yeah, given the conservative nature of the revenue estimates, would it be the intention to pay down the principal in say, an accelerated fashion? Would that be advisable? I mean, given the interest rate that we're...
One of the things we've done on that regard that I do want to mention is we are using the existing convention center as collateral initially during construction, because typically on a lease rental bond like this, you would not be able to start making debt service payments until the project was done. If that's 2 or 3 years out, in this case, you're just basically going to build all those interest costs into your bonding. And so we're not doing any of that. And I would say that, what else was I going to say?
Like, is there any benefit or ability for us to pay down the food and beverage bond early?
Right. You were going to have call restrictions. We have not set those yet because that depends on the market and the cost of it. Typically, you'll have a 10-year period. In the first 10 years after issuance, the bonds are not callable. So after that point in time, if market rates and then in the future are down enough that we can justify a refunding, then you would be able to either refund the bonds or pay off early if you have cash to do that. But typically, there's going to be a 10-year call. Now, if there's a strong interest, we can definitely look with the underwriters on doing like 8 or 9 years. But at this point, we're looking at an effective rate of, on the yield, I know the coupon rates are 5%, but the yield is probably more like 375, 380, something like that is what we're estimating, what the underwriters are estimating. So it's a pretty favorable tax-exempt rate right now. So I don't know that you'll be able to refi, but you would be able to pay down early should you have excess funds after that 10-year holding call period.
Are there other first round questions? Okay. Councilmember, sorry.
This probably follows off of the last two set of questions, but the lease payment outlined in the packet is $4.5 million, I believe. Sorry, I guess, sorry. Do you need some time? The lease payment outlined in the packet is $4.5 million, but the estimated bond payment is lower than that. Can you explain?
Yes, it's much lower than that is the expectation. But when we set those rates, we're far enough out from the actual bond sale that we're not sure what the market's going to do.
Okay.
So we want to make sure we've got room to maneuver. We were looking at probably something, worst case, I hope, is maybe 4.1, 4.2, what our food and beverage estimate is.
And so we'll be able to
but
amend
we
that.
went ahead with just 4.5 just to make sure we had plenty of gap. But no, we don't expect anything close to that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
I actually have a follow-up on that one, too. I want to thank all my colleagues right now for asking the first part of all my questions so I can follow up to them. I also noticed in the lease agreement that $4.5 million per year over 25 years, which if you do the math is $112 million, but this project is supposed to only cost somewhere around $70 million. So can you explain to me why the lease agreement exceeds kind of by a lot the project cost?
It's the interest expense. You're paying principal and interest, so you pay, just like a mortgage, you pay the principal amount you borrow, but to the lenders, who are the bond purchasers, you've got to pay interest. And that's why I said your interest effective yield, we're looking at maybe like 3.75 is that rate. So on $50 million over 20 years, that's the differential we're talking about. That's the interest expense.
Well, that makes sense, but I feel like when we saw that budget, the expected food and beverage incomes pretty much equaled that project cost.
I'm not sure I understand what the question is on that one.
I would have to find it in the packet in terms
That,
of.
I think what you're seeing was just our cash flow through construction. That part of that cash flow includes $50 million of bond proceeds. So the bond proceeds plus the cash on hand plus 3 years of food and beverage tax gets us through building the convention center and starting to pay debt service all at the same time. And so after we spend all that $50 million, then we have to start making annual debt service payments, and that's where the annual food and beverage tax that we're going to keep collecting is still necessary to cover all the debt service payments we need to pay back that original $50 million.
I just want to make sure that our food and beverage expected income is actually going to cover all of this, because I mean, the way the spreadsheets have it worked out is that it lines up exactly, and it's far less than $112 million.
Right. Well, the lease payment, that's what we were just talking about a minute ago, the lease payments. So we expect those lease payments to be probably around about $3.8 million a year. The lease rental, that's principal and interest payment on the bonds. The one we're authorizing up to $4.5 million. So, and currently, last year actual, you were about $4.2 million in food and beverage, 417 something, I think, something like that. So that, I think that's the comparison you're looking for to make sure that the debt service and the food and beverage line up. So
Well,
that they're not
and how
exceeded.
many more years are we collecting the food and beverage tax?
20 years,
But the
20,
lease
40,
agreement
40.
says 25 years.
up to 25 years. Again, it's just a
Okay.
maximum for the convenience of doing the document until we finalize it. It's going to be 20 years, probably. We don't want to put in 20 years and then be like 20 years and 6 months or something like that. So 25 was the maximum allowed by law, so we put it in for the authorization, but we do not plan on going out 25 years.
Okay, that makes more sense, thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Sorry, I have to find it again. I've been hopping around this document. So in the resolution, it says, it's the last whereas clause, it says, it's understood that the council is not pledging the city's distributive shares of the certified shares component of the county local income tax revenues. So what shares are we pledging as a backup to food and beverage? I mean, other than distributed shares, it's just the PS lit, isn't it?
We have the ED lit. So we're pledging the ED lit, and those are not the certified distributed shares.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll follow up on that and ask if that ties up our ED lit in any way that means that we can't spend ED lit on anything else.
No.
Great. Other questions? You have another one, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Probably. It's hard to have a good oversight of all this stuff. Okay, yes, I do have another question. So the schedule of estimated sources and uses of funds has, as sources of funds, the par amount of bonds, and then it has a net premium, 3.6 million. What is that? What is that net premium?
The premium is what the bond purchaser is paying over and above the par amount of the bonds. So if they are buying a $100,000 bond, let's say, and they pay $105,000 for that bond, the $5,000 premium goes in your bond funds. By doing that, they get a higher interest rate on their investment, but you pocket that, they pay the interest differential up front. It's a tax thing for the bondholders, not for you guys. And so you get, by doing a 5% bond, you actually get more money, so your net interest cost is like the 3%, it's 3 to 5% in the actual yield. So I'm trying to do this in a real simple way. It's a very complex formula, but it's a municipal bond market thing where you have bond purchasers that if they get a lower interest rate, they get a discount on the price of the bond. If they had a higher than the face value, then they get a higher interest rate. So, and which way that goes really depends on how the market operates. That's not the place I operate in. I'm not the bond underwriter. But in recent years, I've seen almost all the bonds, high credit bonds, are generate premiums. So you have benefit of issuing a lot less dollar amount, face value of bonds that you're paying interest on, and getting more proceeds from it when you issue it premium bonds. So it really is a set dollar amount that comes in when you sell the bonds, but it's over and above the par amount of the 50 million or whatever the par amount, or it was 46 something on that, yeah.
But, so how do you know that you're going to get that net premium? That 3.6 million, that's just an estimate, I assume?
That's a projection by the underwriters.
Okay.
They'll be real close. That's what they do every day of the week.
Okay.
National bond, yeah, sells, yeah.
Okay.
So they will do that, and they'll make sure. Well, the other thing, I better answer to your question is they know what our requirement is of proceeds. So if they need to, as they field orders in for the bonds, they will tweak things to make sure that, okay, if they don't end up selling as many premium bonds, if they sell a few discount bonds, they'll adjust the face value to make sure that the net proceeds that you get will be sufficient to support the project. So it doesn't really matter really which way it goes. You need to make sure you get the proceeds, and we need to make sure that the debt payment, it doesn't exceed what we're planning for and what our cash flows are. And that's something they'll ensure in the bond sale process.
And that's our bond counsel that monitors that, or whoever?
Your underwriter, Stiefel?
Okay.
Yes, we have an underwriter on the team. They're not here this evening.
Stiefel.
But yeah.
Thank you. Are there other questions? All right, I have another question that's kind of new-ish. So the lease that is in our packet, it sounds like that's more like a draft as opposed to the final. But the actual resolution refers in number 6 to the clerk being authorized to initial and date a copy of the lease as executed. I'm assuming that that is the final version of the lease. And so I guess I just, don't feel like I would be doing my due diligence if I didn't, make sure that we have some assurance that these numbers are going to work out right in the end in terms of food and beverage covering everything that is necessary for this.
Right. Hi, Tenley Drescher Rhodes, here from the law firm of Faegre Drinker, bound counsel for you all. So I can answer that. The lease that you have in your packet is nearly final. It is what will be the initial lease. That's what will start the process of, there's a period, a clock for someone to file a court action, essentially protesting the lease. That's the important part. Then when we actually sell the bonds, and on closing day, we will execute an amendment to this lease that will do only, it will take that rental payment and it will use the bond amortization schedule and it will match that up. So the amendment is to right-size the lease payments to debt service, plus a small fee, about a couple of $1,000s a year for the trustee services. But other than that, it will match actual debt service to the payment. Sitting here today, we can't do that, but we need to get the form of the lease, the initial lease, executed and started so that we can start that clock. Before we actually get to the process, we need that 30 days to be done before we actually can sell bonds. So we do have a chicken and egg, and but this is what we do. That's why part of closing is that amendment to right-size the lease payments.
Great, thank you. That helps me understand. Any other questions from council members? Councilmember Rallo.
Controller. So just imagining worst case scenarios. So you've locked in 4.2 million essentially in revenue every year expected, which is likely to grow. There's inflation too, but and if that fails, then we dip into ED Lit likely. And ED Lit now has a yearly revenue of what? What is that? 14 million?
Just over 17 million.
17 million. And what would you imagine, how much of that is like discretionary? In other words, how much are we locked in terms of just maintaining city services
in our budget?
In those various, categories that we assign for the ED Lit to be expended for? How much would be, how much wiggle room do we have if we were to say, okay, well, now we've got to go to the ED Lit? Are we going to be making sacrifices in terms of basic city services, or do we have some cushion?
I think that there are some restrictions. There's some restrictions on ED Lit right now to fund some special city services or special programs in the community, because when ED Lit was passed, we wanted to sort of try to help take the burden off of workers and taxpayers in Bloomington. And there are also a lot of grants that are coming out of ED Lit. There are some, this is all just off the top of my head, so it's sort of like this is my draft version in my head of what is in ED Lit. I know there are some salaries in ED Lit, so there are some parts of ED Lit that are not discretionary. And ED Lit is a very important, general revenue of the city. It is a large revenue. And I think in long-term planning, we need to really look at how we use that revenue to support essential city services. But right now, at the moment, I think that we could take a good look at ED Lit and sort of reallocate how ED Lit is used in the future. I think there is some wiggle room in ED Lit. And like I said, this is my sort of controller. I wasn't really prepared for this question. This is sort of my draft of like what we did in budget hearings last year. I don't know if you would agree with that, if your memory of ED Lit is the same as mine, but I'm kind of going off memory.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think that's true, that there's enough that, say we only meet half the amount from the food and beverage tax that we're expecting. We probably have a couple million that we could deploy without hardship, I'm thinking.
I'm thinking too.
Okay, all right, that helps me, thank you.
To follow up on that for just a second, you just said that not all of ED Lit is discretionary and some of it is kind of committed into other places, but you also said earlier that Section 8, which Councilmember Piedmont Smith asked about, which states that lit revenues are not pledged to other obligations. It sounds like some lit revenues are pledged to other obligations. So I'm
pledged to a bond. They're not pledged to a bond, but we do appropriate all of ED Lit annually every year. So it's all appropriated to city expenses, but it's not legally pledged to a bond. Bondholders have a legal right to that money if it says it's pledged in a bond ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, I think that we should go to public comment now. If anybody would like to comment on, and I can't remember what resolution number we're on right now. Resolution 2025-03, please make your way to the podium and you would have up to 3 minutes to comment on this matter. If you're on Zoom and would like to make a comment, please use the reactions tab to raise your hand, or you can send a chat message to the host. I don't see anybody moving to the podium yet, but is there anybody who would? We'll go ahead and start in chambers. Please state your name and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council. I'm Eric Spoonmore, Chamber of Commerce, here tonight to urge your support of this important economic development opportunity for our community. A lot of reasons to support this resolution, but one distinction I think that is germane to our community right now is the urgent need for economic development investments that will bring tax dollars flowing back to our local units of government. And this is important right now because we're hearing the distress from local officials across Indiana due to new legislation like Senate Bill 1 that could severely constrain our ability to raise revenue for our community in the future. And based on what we're seeing in the General Assembly right now, I think it's safe to say that some significant cuts are coming to local government in the years ahead, and it's going to be imperative that elected leaders find solutions to fund and maintain the local services that we need and depend on. And so one tool that we have at our disposal right now at this very moment is this item before you tonight, which will fund the construction of the convention center expansion. And what really makes this easy is that the funding is already there, thanks to the county council passing the food and beverage tax in 2016. And so we just need to build the thing now so that we can benefit from the economic development that this project will yield in terms of new tax revenue going back to the city. I think it's important to note that several local revenue streams will be enhanced by this expanded convention center. This will put more money back into the local government coffers at a time where every tax dollar is going to matter. Specifically, we'll see increased property tax revenues from all the new businesses that will be created in our new convention center district. We'll also see growth of local income taxes collected as new businesses are created and employment grows in our convention center district. Innkeeper tax collections and food and beverage tax collections will grow significantly as more visitors are coming to our community and spending their dollars with our local businesses. And this is really what economic development is all about. And it'll pay great dividends back to the city at this critical time where our conventional revenue streams are being put at risk by the General Assembly. I think this project is really just some of the lowest hanging fruit that we have here for Bloomington. It's an easy way that we can diversify our revenue streams and counteract some of the impact that we know that these looming cuts are going to have that we're facing. So anyways, thank you all for your work on this. Thanks to all the partnership with all the local officials who have worked so long on this project for decades, actually. I urge your support for the resolution. Please vote yes for it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have another person in chambers. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, council members. I'm Vaughn Welch, and I encourage you to support this resolution. My perspective is a little more philosophical. I think we're living in very tumultuous times right now, and I think it's really important that Bloomington shows itself to be more significant. And I think this is reflected in a lot of my personal work in growing nonprofits in this area, and I think this would be a significant step forward in terms of our private sector. I also think it represents a lot of work now, as my friend Eric just said a moment ago, by a number of, well, yourselves and former council members, as well as the CIB and other elected officials, and I feel that it's time for this to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we keep going in chambers, is there anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment? Let's go ahead and go with that Zoom commenter, please. Please state your name for the record when you're unmuted, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Wes Martin. Good evening, council members. I'm the former labor deputy for the Monroe County Democratic Party. I say former because we just had our party reorganization on Saturday and have yet to establish our 25 party appointments. Considering this ordinance, the difficulties labor has had with the CIB and the significance of the financing involved in this project, I'm asking you to table this vote for the time being. The convention center expansion, Mr. Spoonmore is correct, is a large public works project. It is a great public works project. However, we don't need to just go ahead and build it. We need to make sure that we build it correctly. And that means using union and organized labor in order to create this large public works project. I have to tell you that I am deeply disappointed by the way our brothers and sisters in labor have been treated by the CIB. With bids set to take place in just a few months, the CIB has repeatedly dismissed labor's concerns, particularly those of our brothers and sisters in IBEW, plumbers and steam fitters, and LIUNA, over the lack of commitments and the use of organized and union labor in the building of this project. Again, one of the largest public works projects this city has undertaken, at least in the last generation. David Henry, to his credit, has advocated for labor concessions from the CIB, both as a county council member and as the Democratic Party chair. Councilmember Zulik, too, is a friend to labor and has repeatedly raised our concerns with Weikart and the CIB. And regardless of that, we have not been heard. We have failed to secure any concessions or guarantees from the CIB that union labor will have a shot to build this thing. We have repeatedly asked for a project labor agreement and haven't even been heard or received a responsible bidder ordinance. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind the council that the city has a responsible bidder ordinance in place for publicly funded projects that take place in the city. And I can think of no more responsible bidder than contractors and companies that employ union labor, well-trained workers who know how to do the job, do it well, and do it safely. Our city should demand nothing less. And again, I ask the council to make a motion to table this item for the time being. There's a lot of financing that is in the way here, and labor has not had the opportunity to be heard by the CIB. And we look forward to working with them in the future, but we just have not had the ability to be heard.
Thank you. We'll go next in chambers. Please state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Galen Cassidy. I'm with the Uptown Cafe downtown. I'm here in support of this resolution and hope that the council here would support the resolution as it is intended. You know, as a downtown business, we're seeing guests join us every day, and every week I'm answering this question about this food and beverage tax. We're the ones that are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, explaining what this is for. And honestly, it has become a bit of a joke over the last several years because of the time it has taken to get to this far. And recently, we've seen a lot of progress, and it's been exciting to see, and it's been exciting to tell people this is for an expanded convention center. It's been exciting to show them the renderings of the new convention center and the capabilities it has for various different activities. And again, as a downtown business owner, what we're looking forward to is this generating some movement for the local economy in some of our troubling areas, which is Monday through Thursdays, non-weekend hours, the summers. I mean, you'll hear from all sorts of business owners that restaurants, bars, and people in the hospitality industry brace, you know, for the summer. We hope our graduation weekend is great and it can ride us through the summer. A project like this has a great opportunity to provide more during the summer, during the weekdays. And again, I just want to reiterate, it's been really exciting to talk to people and tell them that we're actually getting somewhere right now. And that's thanks to a lot of collaboration between the city council, the administration, the county. I think the CIB has done great work in involving all sorts of different people, and I'm excited to see how the arts are involved in this project too. So I think it's got a lot of exciting things going for it, and I'm just here in full support and hope you're all too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in chambers, please state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, good evening, council. My name is Jordan Davis. I'm with Chocolate Mousse. I'm also the board president for Visit Bloomington. I want to just echo the sentiments that Mr. Cassidy said. Also, people here much more qualified to speak on this than I am. I know you've heard all the pros by now, but just wanted to urge my support to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go next in chambers, is there anybody else on Zoom who has raised their hand for a comment?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, great, thank you. Next in chambers, please state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Talisha Kopic with Downtown Bloomington, Inc. and the Convention Center. And on behalf of our employees, our 42 small business contractors that help support the Convention Center, our 400 events, we're thrilled to see the momentum and to be at this point in a very long journey. It's exciting, and it's been interesting to see the evolution of the Convention Center over the years. It started as a 1923 Model A Ford assembly plant. Then it became a dealership. Then it sat empty for years. It had a train going through 5 times a day, rattling the building, and meetings would have to stop and wait for the train to pass. And but it's been a great event and meeting venue developed to support the community. We've hosted over 14,000 events over that time since 1991. It's been a very sturdy building, but it's ready to go to that next step. Thanks to many, many groups for paving the way, the Monroe County Commissioners and Council, Convention of Visitors Commission, the Building Corporation, Visit Bloomington, Chamber, BEDC have had unwavering support over the years. Citizens using the facility, we appreciate all that community support that's gotten us to this point. But thank you now to the City Council, the Mayor, and the City Administration for working so hard, for your thoughtful questions and input and insight, helping form this venue to the next step and a modern one that we can all be proud of. And especially thank you to the Capital Improvement Board, led by John Weikart, and a strong team of volunteers that work together well. It's a really great opportunity to be able to have them help lead this with a professional team of experts, of designers and construction folks and legal and financial. The stars have aligned, and this has been really important for taking this project to this next step, because it's very complicated, very meticulous. They've gone through step by step, listened to folks. They've are creating a strong momentum. So we enthusiastically support this resolution, and thank you for all your work that you're doing on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in chambers, go ahead and approach the podium and state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes. And I'm forgetting to tell people to sign in, but I did notice somebody signing in. If you could sign in too, that would be great. Thank you.
Oh, hello. My name is Jennifer Maria Zinovich, and I'm with Clash Art Gallery on Kirkwood. And I just wanted to say thank you, and I hope that I hope this all really happens, and I'm in support of this resolution, because I'm most excited in what I hear from other people about people coming from all over to Bloomington. Like, a big part of my business is people that are from out of town, and they're coming to visit, and then they, are out shopping, looking at Bloomington and buying things. So I'm just really excited about that, and other people I talk to, it just is a cool thing. I hope it goes through. So thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you. Has anybody raised their hand on Zoom? Great. Let's go ahead and go with our Zoom commenter. If you could state your name for the record when you're unmuted, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hi, I think I'm unmuted. My name is Alicia Krupp, and I'm a representative from WonderLab Museum, which is going to be right next to the new convention center. And I'm just here to say that WonderLab strongly supports this resolution, and we'd like to see the convention center project proceed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Just very brief. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Let's go ahead here in chambers. Go ahead and step forward. State your name for the record and sign in. You'll have up to 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Dory. I'm for Space Technology, and I'm the current board president of DBI. First of all, I want to thank John Weikart and his group for putting in countless hours to get this thing done. As I walk around Bloomington as a board president and talk to people downtown, everybody wants this thing to happen now, and they're all excited about it. And personally, on a personal note, I am tired of losing conventions to Muncie, Evansville, and Terre Haute, which is where people are going right now that have nice convention centers. So, so let's get this done, please, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there anybody, okay, it looks like we have another Zoom commenter. Let's go ahead and go to Zoom again. When you've been unmuted, please state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Samantha Eibling. I am a DBI member as well as on the board, Goods for Cooks owner and Bloomington Yoga Collective owner downtown. And I would like to offer my support for the convention center expansion. Our businesses, both of them, rely heavily on those coming to visit Bloomington. And we see quite a bit of business on the off season with the university. So in the summertime on breaks coming from different events that are happening at the convention center as well as other places throughout the town. We would be very excited to continue that and to see that corridor from downtown to the Hopewell neighborhood fill in with this expansion. I'd also like to thank the city and the county, all of the partners who've been working diligently and hard on this for the last several years. I know it's not been easy, and we really appreciate everything that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Coming back to Chambers, please state your name for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
The Capital Improvement Board. Let me begin by stating that the past 21 months has been the beginning of a remarkable journey made possible because city and county governmental elected officials wanted to achieve a community success. And after over 30 public meetings seeking input from various stakeholders, elected officials, and the public, the Capital Improvement Board now asks your support to move forward in this journey. In asking for that support, we have been mindful of your recommendations, and we have conscientiously incorporated that information and guidance in our decisions. As a result, this is a project that is limited strictly to a budget funded with bonding ability and food and beverage tax revenues, dedicated to sustainability, the highest efficiency mechanical system, total electric, a green roof, an attractive green garden exterior space, and confidence that we will achieve the LEED Silver certification you desired, among others. Designed for bus and shuttle transportation for safe and convenient movement of conference attendees, approved by the Plan Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, preliminary approval of the Board of Works, and assistance and support of the professional staff of the City Planning Department. Engaged in showcasing the uniqueness of the Bloomington Entertainment and Arts District, creating a B District advisory group to emphasize we are only one of 11 cultural districts in the state of Indiana. Committed not just to attracting conventions, but in how our spaces provide civic uses for public meetings, lectures, community forums. Evolved from all the input we've received to produce this high-quality architectural statement that reflects the uniqueness that is Bloomington and of which we will all be proud. And to revisit a conversation you had at your last meeting where I know you had some conversation about the word needed or need in the resolution, let me offer that if we want to generate the projected $9 million annually in new visitor spending in support of our local businesses, if we want to generate the projected $13 million annually in new revenue created by additional services, income to local employees, and new property innkeepers and food and beverage tax revenues, if we want to invest in an estimated 600 construction jobs for our local workforce during construction, and if we want to create the estimated 500 new jobs in the hospitality industry for which this project has potential, then to accomplish those goals, we do need the convention center. Let me just quickly say that having heard Mr. Martin's comments, I don't believe I've ever met Wes Martin. We have had conversations with our friends in labor. The last one was in October. We've not been approached by them since then. At our February 19th meeting, we actually passed a resolution and adopted the same guidelines and directions for the Weddle brothers to use in pre-qualification requirements that the Marion County Capital Improvement Board uses. And those requirements, those preliminary requirements would waive for our organized labor friends, meeting other requirements that other
I'm
contractors.
sorry, Mr. Weikart, that's your 3 minutes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm just stunned to have heard those comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other commenters on Zoom right now? Great, let's go ahead and go to Zoom again. When you're unmuted, please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jennifer Crossley. I am President of Monroe County Council, and I would like to urge my council colleagues on the city side to pass this resolution. As it's been stated many times before, and I think Mr. Spoonmore from the Chamber of Commerce had mentioned, this is going to have a great impact on economic development. In a time where there is federal government and sometimes state government to the level of uncertainty, we owe it to our businesses downtown and to the larger community to have some type of stability and pass this resolution. And by passing this, this just shows the community that we can continue to go forward. We can continue to request the things that we ask for in terms of, the labor thing, which was brought up by a commenter a few comments ago, but we can still press forward with this conversation, and we can still move forward with this project. I just think that this is a great collaborative effort. I think the CIB, and I appreciate their efforts in listening to some of the concerns that we've all had in terms of getting this project off on the ground. I just think this is a way that we can continue to have momentum. I also dare to say that our state lawmakers are looking at us, and so our ability or inability to get projects done and to completion could ultimately affect how we govern. So I just really would urge you all to continue to press forward with this. Again, if there's conversations regarding labor issues, I personally, as a daughter of folks who had parents who were part of, labor unions, I definitely think that is a concern. I understand other council members have concerns of that too. Let's talk about that. But as we continue to talk about that, let us continue to press forward with this issue, and let's continue on with this project. So I just urge you all to say yes to this resolution so we can continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's continue here in chambers. Please step forward, go ahead and sign in, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening to the council. My name is Denzel Ross, and I serve as the president of the South Region for IU Health. In a time where we have grave uncertainty about what could possibly look at how we deliver health care, particularly in this city and this region, one of the things that is a challenge to us all the time is our opportunity of recruiting high quality qualified candidates to fill our facilities from a nursing perspective, physician perspective, other providers, and clinical ancillary support team members. As we continue to look at what that looks like over the course of the time thus far, one of the things or the conversation that continues to come up is not only about the environment of where you work, but also where you have the opportunity to live and play. And from an economic development standpoint, I think our folks that we continue to talk to and recruit are always looking at where the city is going, what are the key important aspects that would allow this to be a place that they could bring families, they could grow, doing innovative things, and continuing to challenge the status quo. And so this may be somewhat of a downstream benefit, but I think as one of the largest employers in the city, we continue to look at what are those other things that we can use to support and entice key leaders and highly qualified members of the healthcare community to come to Bloomington in support of what we do. And I think this, for many other reasons that's stated here today, I ask for your support to vote on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody on Zoom? Okay, let's go ahead and go back to Zoom then. When you're unmuted, please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Julie Thomas, Monroe County Commissioner, and I appreciate being given an opportunity to speak today. Getting to this important juncture has taken a lot of time and energy. It began many years ago, and some of you were part of this deliberative process. Despite the fits and starts and a pause due to COVID, collaboration worked in the long run. We each recognize the benefits of relinquishing control, and the entire process has by necessity been collaborative. the county council passed the food and beverage tax. Monroe County has dedicated land for the project, as well as the existing building. And in addition, we dedicated more than $1 million in ARPA funding to repair and renovate portions of the current convention center across a dozen projects, big and small. And of course, funding from the innkeeper's tax managed by the county continues to roll in. The process has been led very capably by the Capital Improvement Board. Each elected body has representation on that board in a bit more than a year and a half, more than 24 public meetings. They're moving forward at a good pace, and they represent our collective best interest and the best interest of the community. We gave the CIB the reins. They have not let us down. Please let them continue to work on the design. Please, in the future, let them do their work. We have to make sure that we don't lose this delicate balance we have painstakingly achieved when the CIB was created. I encourage you to speak with Mr. Weichart, since he's in the room, about the labor issue. It is important, but it needs to be addressed. So please, if you can do that, please do so. Once that's resolved, I encourage you to vote yes today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead here in chambers. Please step to the mic, sign in, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
I'm Carrie Thompson. Members of the council, I wanted to just strongly urge you to support this resolution tonight. The support of the convention center is really key, not only to our economic development, but to our downtown vitality. It is a key connection point as we move southward with our perceived downtown. It brings presence on the B line, and of course, it is becoming critical to Bloomington to attract the very best tourism. We are undoubtedly one of the top locations in the state, and I would say we are the top location in the state. This is a key part of our downtown, and I just wanted to briefly address the labor issue. I've read the documents, and they strongly favor labor. And I have also talked to several CIB members about this topic, and I think that labor issue is one where we'll see lots of union builders out there in many different trades. Just to meet the safety qualifications alone, you almost have to be union. So I think that's something we can continue to work with the CIB on, and I'm not going to take my full 3 minutes, but I do just want to express my deep, deep gratitude to the team of volunteers on the CIB who have just done the brave leadership of the tangible work of this collaboration. And honestly, as the convention center goes, this has been warp speed collaboration in the last year plus. So kudos to you all for playing your role in the collaboration, and many thanks to the CIB for your leadership.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No hands are raised.
Okay, no hands raised. It looks like we have somebody else in chambers. Please sign in, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Mike McAfee. I'm Executive Director at Visit Bloomington. I want to thank Council for their attention to this very important matter. We are one of the many voices that represent the hospitality and tourism industry in Monroe County. We just received our most recent economic impact report. In 2023, visitors spent over $500 million in Monroe County, supported 7,400 jobs. We do a 3-year strategic plan. I've been at Visit Bloomington for 18 years. We're in the 5th one that I've created, and every time one of the top 3 initiatives is support the expansion of the Monroe Convention Center. So the tourism industry across the region, the county, is behind this 100%, and please vote yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody raised a hand on Zoom? Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to make a public comment? Okay, not seeing any takers. That brings us back to council. Councilmember Daly, do you have a question or comment?
Thank you. Yes, I do have a question. First of all, thank you, everybody, for all of those many, many hours that I can't even conceive of that went into all of this. I do want to acknowledge Mr. Martin brought up a really great point in his call. And he proposed the idea of tabling this. And I'm sure that, maybe some people are wondering about the labor question now. So I'm just curious if anybody has an answer for me. What would be the ramifications of tabling this resolution for tonight? Is that probably a bad idea, probably a good idea for the conversation, but I want to hear somebody let us know.
I'll take a shot. Tenley Drescher Roads again. Tabling this tonight. Again, we're on, we have a timetable and you have a set of steps that have to go in a certain order. And anytime you delay one of those steps, you delay the ultimate issuance of the bonds. So tabling this tonight would cause however long of a lag in the date of closing on the bonds and the receipt of proceeds. Again, it all depends how dates work out, so I can't tell you that it's a 1-for-1. It could be a 1-for-2 or a 1-for-3, but yeah, it would delay closing.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Rallo.
Could we permit Mr. Weikart to respond to the question about labor considerations and the objection by the caller? Is this facility, are we committing to use union labor?
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I apologize for going over my 3 minutes to try to rush through responding to that. Let me give you a brief history of our particular involvement in this. Last summer, we had conversations about a suggestion that we enter into a project labor agreement. We studied that. Our council looked at that. We met in October of last year with a number of representatives of organized labor who were proponents of a project labor agreement for the project. Project labor agreement basically is a negotiated agreement between the owner, labor unions that would primarily mean that all work on the project would be done by contractors with labor agreements. In that October conversation, as part of our due diligence, we were aware of the Marion County CIB and an agreement they had which showed preferential treatment, in our opinion, for contractors with organized labor. I was never contacted again after October by anyone about how we were going to move forward with this. When we made contact with those who we met with in October to tell them at our February 19th meeting, we intended to move forward with an agreement or with a resolution much like the Marion County CIB resolution, which in our opinion shows extreme preferential treatment to contractors with labor agreements. There are, Weddle Brothers has a pre-qualification, I'm going to state this incorrectly probably, pre-qualification requirements that they have to put out to bidders. What we did was said that we wanted them to use a minimum of pre-qualification requirements that had 7 elements to it. 6 of those elements would require a non-union contractors to meet every one of those 6 qualification elements in order to be a successful bidder. The 7th element said if you were a contractor with an organized labor agreement, those other elements are waived in your case. We already recognize you meet them. So from that standpoint, we intended to show preferential treatment for contractors who have organized labor agreements. I will tell you that I lobbied harder than any representative of organized labor among our members to make sure that we could get that accomplished at our February meeting, because it was important. It was important that we recognize that. It was important that we honor our local labor, organized labor unions with that. I will tell you that the last time Monroe County or the city had any such agreement was in 2015, and that was the Morton Street Garage. Any of the projects that you have dealt with since then, the 4th Street parking garage, the fire station, anything you've dealt with has never gone as far as we have gone to give preferential treatment to contractors with labor agreements. As I said, the last one was in 2015, and that was the county. We find no research whatsoever that the city's ever done it. So at our February 19th meeting, the day before, we notified the representatives we met with in October that we would proceed the next day by adopting the CIB resolution that Marion County used. Members of organized labor came to our meeting on February 19th. I met with them and talked to them prior to the meeting, told them what we intended to do. They made no comment to me one way or another. We adopted that at our February 19th meeting, and the representatives of organized labor did not stay to make any public comment, even though I invited them to do that. So again, I would repeat, I'm stunned by what I heard tonight. I would also say to you that as we have stated now for the 21 months of this project, every month of delay in this project cost us an estimated $160,000. We don't have a way to raise an additional $160,000. So that means it's $160,000 that comes out of the project. So every delay costs us money. Every delay at this point will cost us time in terms of getting bids out beginning in March. Will delay contractors' opportunities to bid on this project. And we are committed to recognizing the contributions that organized labor makes to us and to our workforce. I will tell you that in an October meeting, when I asked those representatives, what happens if we were to adopt what you want us to adopt, and there is not a contractor available to us to come and work on this project? And the answer I got was, we can bring people from Texas. I don't want people from Texas having to come to work on our local project. I want our local workforce to build the convention center expansion. We are committed to that. We've made that clear, and I don't know how to make it any more clear. And I'm 77 years old, and I'm not stunned easily, but I stand here a bit stunned. So anyway, and I also want to quickly say, President Stossberg mentioned this in her opening remarks. This is the only thing I've accomplished this week, but it's only Wednesday, so I've still got a couple of more days to get some other things done. So any other questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of actually have a follow-up, because while you've been talking, I've been trying to find that resolution that you referenced from February 19th, and I can't find it yet because those minutes haven't been approved.
On our website.
Yeah, I'm on it. Anyway, I would be interested mostly in knowing what those 6 requirements are.
From memory?
Well, that's why I was looking for it.
They have to do with apprenticeship program. I may have, let me ask, tell me who wants to make a comment. Let me see if I can find mine in my folder, if I can step away for a moment.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Or did you want to address?
Well, I just want to provide a little additional context on this issue. So an actual project labor agreement, that is something that government in the state of Indiana, local government cannot enter into that agreement. That is something that is used to happen. Then legislation, the State General Assembly saw that they did not want that to happen anymore. At a certain point, probably around, I think, 2008 or 9, don't quote me on the date. So it is not something that government can do. What they can do is what the CIB has done and what they're looking for a copy of is to adopt some pre-qualification standards that provide minimum standards for safety and workmanship and whatnot that have standards that union-based shops are inherently going to meet those standards because of the programs that they run and et cetera. So just to provide some context, private projects, private owners, if you're going to build a private hotel or a private building, they can enter into a project labor agreement. Local government cannot.
Thank you for that clarification. Well, Mr. Weikarts, did you find the?
I did. I accidentally brought it.
Wonderful. If you could just read those 6
Sure.
elements that contractors would have to meet, I would
These are
appreciate
the first 6 written criteria, and this document is labeled minimum subcontractor pre-qualification requirements, which we, as a CIB, directed Weddle Brothers to include. Now, there may be other requirements that the Weddle Brothers may have, but these are minimum subcontractor pre-qualification requirements that we adopted February 19th. Number 1, no work stoppages. During the term of any subcontract, there shall be no strikes, stoppages, slowdowns, picketing, and interruptions of any type. Number 2, these are for contractors. Contractors must meet this. They must have a grievance resolution process. Subcontractor in each of its sub-tier contractors must have a grievance resolution process for their employees working on the project. Number 3, requirement in health insurance. Subcontractor in each of its subcontractors shall provide to their employees a retirement savings plan and provide contributions on behalf of their employees and health insurance coverage and disability insurance coverage. Apprenticeship programs. All employees of subcontractor and each of its sub-tier contractors shall have completed or are enrolled in an apprenticeship program that must incorporate on-the-job and classroom training sponsored by the employer and credited through the United States Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship. Safety and health laws. Subcontractor will at all times comply and require all subcontractors, craft workers, suppliers, and vendors to comply with all applicable federal and state labor, occupational safety and health laws, federal, state laws, and applicable law. Size of workforce, subcontractor and each of its subcontractors and laborers shall increase the size of their workforce if work demands require it in order to ensure compliance with the schedule. And number 7, collective bargaining agreements. Subcontractor and each of its subcontractors that are party to a collective bargaining agreement with a labor organization as defined by the National Labor Relations Act shall be deemed to have satisfied sections 1 through 6 of these pre-qualification requirements. So we've said, if you want to bid on this project, you have to meet all 6 of those requirements. If you are a contractor with a labor agreement, they're waived for you. We recognize you already meet those requirements. So that's what we adopted at our February 29th meeting. It's the same language used by the CIB in Marion County. We thought it was labor friendly. We still believe it's labor friendly, and that's where we were on February 19th.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilmember Rallo, you had another question?
Yeah, I had a follow-up. Mr. Weickert very adeptly answered that question. My other question, Mr. Weickert, is one that is perennial, and that is in our interlocal agreement from a few years past to create the CIB and to move forward with the convention center. Section 5 describes that the expanded convention center should also serve as a civic center.
Yes.
I know this debate came up in one of your recent meetings about the naming of the facility, and you decided on convention and as opposed to civic, or convention without civic included. Could you give me some assurances that this is still, we are still following a intention to have this as a community space for events and so forth?
Absolutely, and let me describe the naming process. The interlocal agreement charges the Capital Improvement Board with the naming of the facility. with the caveat that if the Capital Improvement Board wanted to sell the naming rights, it had to have the prior approval of the mayor and the county commissioners. We were not going to move forward with selling the naming rights for the Bloomington Convention Center. We created a process by which 3 members of our Capital Improvement Board met with a group of stakeholders, a large group of stakeholders, the same representatives of the same groups we met with in July when we began the initial design process for the building. So there were representatives from the downtown Bloomington. We invited representatives from the Convention and Visitor Center. We invited Visit Bloomington. We invited the Monroe County History Center. We invited Indiana University. And I will say quickly that Indiana University said one of the more stunning things. I'm sorry, I've overused stunned tonight. Said one of the most surprising things I heard in the meeting, because I hadn't heard it before, and that was that Indiana University believes this project is so critically important because of the number of academic conferences that they have to turn away each year because they don't have space or they have conflicts. And so this project was also important to them. What we heard very quickly, and a member of the airport board, the director of the airport was there as well, and I'm forgetting other people, and I apologize for that. What we heard very quickly in a very quick meeting was what should not be too surprising, and that is remembering that we are marketing to an external audience in terms of branding. We're not marketing to a local audience. We're trying to attract conventionaires from around the state, from around the nation. And so what was critically important in the name is location and use. Bloomington and use being convention center, and the reason convention center became so important, and we heard this from our friends at Visit Bloomington and the convention center staff, is that when people are looking for locations to hold conventions, they're looking for that name. They're looking for convention center in the name. If they don't find it, they move on. In my own look at, when I Googled convention centers and civic centers, what I discovered was convention centers are places where events are held. Civic centers commonly are places that co-house units of government, nonprofit organizations. So there is a distinction, a very distinct difference between convention centers and civic centers. So it became important in that exercise, and very quickly the conclusion or the recommendation was made, you need to call it the Bloomington Convention Center. My sensitivity to that, quite frankly, was that we've got a 31-year history of Monroe County's support for this current convention center. It's been funded through tax revenues by Monroe County. It's been supported by Monroe County. If it weren't for Monroe County's commitment to that convention center, we wouldn't be talking about what we're talking about tonight. And I was extremely sensitive to that. I had conversations with the county commissioners. I had conversations with Jeff McKim, and I had conversations with a member of the county council, and they understood why we needed to do what we were doing, because we were marketing to an external audience. What we did was we assured them that we would recognize the commitment of Monroe County and the legacy of Monroe County and the legacy of the current convention center as we move forward. In terms of the use of the facility, we believe we've designed a facility that by its design will be able to be used for civic purposes. And when we get to the point where we are marketing the use of the convention center, again, marketing to an external audience for conventions, we need to be able to market to our internal audience, Bloomington and Monroe County, the fact that we have an exhibit hall now where we could hold civic events, we could hold voter forums, we could hold lectures, we could bring people together for civic causes that we frankly can't do right now. We had League of Women Voters had a meeting last fall in the current convention center, and people stood in the hall because there wasn't room for them in any of the rooms we have in the current convention center. We had a Duke rate increase hearing where there wasn't enough room for people. We've designed a facility where we can make all that possible now, and we are committed to making that possible. So we have not forgotten that. It's not in the name because the name is for external marketing, but it's going to be in the use.
Wonderful. Thank you for going into that detail.
Thank you. Are there other council member questions? Okay, are there council member comments before we vote on this matter? Councilmember Rallo.
Yeah, I'll just keep it brief, just to say that, so the question about organized labor, I think, has been answered to my satisfaction. I was a bit concerned, but that was sort of a curveball to me. It was the first time I had heard of it, and I understand that now we have a process by which we evaluate the standard of labor that's going to be deployed there, and that in any case, we can't mandate it. It's a matter of preference according to state law. I just wanted to also note, I think that I get reminded of this when I have constituent meetings or I meet people and they say, why are we doing a convention center? There's so many other things that we could be doing with tax money. But this is specific tax money that was voted on by the city council back in 2017. It's been a long time in coming. And it is not a property tax, it's not an income tax, it doesn't have revenue coming from any other sources like parking meter fund or anything like that. This is specific for the convention center and civic center, convention and civic center, I think of it as. And that was decided, it was lobbied for by area businesses and area restaurants and bars and so forth. So they were positive about that. It convinced me that it was the way to go forward, especially in lean times and summer months and things like that, when we need visitors coming to keep these businesses afloat. And it turned out that during the pandemic, those revenues came in handy for loans to those businesses to keep them afloat in tough times. So that was a very fortuitous pot of money that we had to use at that point. So I just wanted to say thank you for everyone. There's too many to mention, but the CIB, our county colleagues, I'm very happy to see this move forward, and I'll be, needless to say, voting for it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other council member comments? Councilmember Asari.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say and reflect on the fact that I have this great sense of gratitude and optimism every time that we get to talk about the convention center, particularly because of all of the local businesses, the local leaders, downtown stakeholders, community members who have been so actively engaged and unified in supporting this effort. And I find that truly inspiring. I think this spirit of collaboration and determination is a powerful testament to what makes Bloomington special. It's us, it's our people, and our ground game, our shared commitment to a thriving community. And I think that that's what really sets us apart. And so, as one person said, forward ever, backward never. But the only way that we do that is in unity, is together. And so if we can unite with such resolve on this issue, I'm confident that we also can move forward with the same strength and solidarity to tackle the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. With so many changing things, I think, in the world that we're living in today, just really wanted to thank each and every one of you, to everyone who shared their time, their insights, those of you who are volunteering to move this forward, your passion for this city. Thank you to our local businesses, the community leaders, and every resident who's raised their voice, both in support and in trying to make this better and showed up for Bloomington. I think your dedication and belief in our shared future are what makes this community extraordinary. This unity is one of the many reasons that I believe so strongly in our future. And so thank you for your passion, your voices, and your faith in what we can do together. I had a lot of time to write that because,
Thank you very much. Councilmember Zulik.
Y'all, I hate to follow council members. But I will just say, I think Councilmember Asari covered a lot of my feelings on this issue, as well as Councilmember Rallo. I guess I will just say, this is the first major project that I've really had the opportunity to work on. And now I look at the crowd and I see a lot of people that I would consider to be my friends. And so I guess I will just say thank you so much for being so lovely and so willing to answer all of my questions about how different things work. It's really been an honor to work with you all on this project, and you will see me at the next CIB meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other council member comments? I'll just quickly then say thank you as well to everybody who's worked so hard on this project. And I also want to call out Mr. Martin. Thank you for bringing up the labor concern that you had. I also feel like it was addressed, and that is something that I've asked a couple of times at meetings in terms of an assurance, and I've always kind of been assured in this hazy way that it was going to happen, and I really appreciate that Mr. Weikart was here today and that the CIB passed that resolution in February, and so that really made it concrete in a way that I don't think that it was quite concrete until then. So I appreciate that being brought up, and I appreciate that there was such preparedness on the CIB's behalf of addressing it. So with that very short comment, would the clerk please call the roll on Resolution 2025-03?
Yes, Councilmember Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
Daly?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Nasari?
Yes.
Thank you.
With the imminent departure of Councilmember Daly, no, stick around. We have 3 more things. Come on. I do just want to say real quick,
Okay.
if we could depart quietly out there. With the departure of Councilmember Daly, we are down to 5 members, which is barely a quorum. So just FYI, if anybody needs to get up for any reason, I have to call a recess. So with that, if we could move on to our next.
Motion to recess for just 2 minutes because I need to go to the restroom, and I would rather it
Okay,
not be abrupt.
we will restore. I will give 5 minutes for a recess. Thank you. We will recess for 5 minutes. All right. Seeing as we have our quorum back again, I'll call us back to order after our recess, and we will move on to Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02.
I move Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. Everybody in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02 to additionally appropriate from the opioid settlement funds for the Downtown Outreach Grant Program. The synopsis is as follows. This appropriation ordinance funds the Downtown Outreach Grant Program and the Opioid Settlement Restricted Fund and Opioid Settlement Unrestricted Fund for the Community and Family Resources Department for the year 2025 for $250,000.
Thank you.
I move Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It looks like we have Controller McClellan here to present again. You have the floor.
Council, Controller McClellan here to present to you the Downtown Outreach Grant Program. We wish to fund this out of the opioid settlement funds. There are 2 funds, the unrestricted fund, which can be used for any legal purpose, and the restricted fund, which has to strictly follow the guidelines set forth by the Attorney General's office. $200,000 is in the restricted fund, and we feel that the historical recipients of the DTO grant would fit into this fund. We put $50,000 in the unrestricted fund so that the CFRD department can still give this grant to worthy agencies that don't strictly fit into the opioid restricted fund. I have with me tonight Miss Marissa Scott Parr from CFRD, and if you have any questions about how CFRD administers this grant program or about the application process, we're happy to help answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there council member questions about appropriation ordinance 2025-02? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I'd like to move Amendment 1 to appropriation ordinance 2025-02.
Second.
So this amendment is just making a correction in the whereas clauses, making several corrections in the whereas clauses. One is a factual correction just about when we last appropriated from the parking meter fund. It was 2023 for 2024. And then just clarifying why the parking meter fund cannot be used and why opioid settlement, unrestricted and restricted funds are being proposed as funding sources. And the last one is just some typographical errors. So those are the corrections that are proposed that are in your packet addendum that went out late this afternoon.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Councilmember Piedmont Smith about her amendment? Councilmember Rallo?
Yes, can we ask the controller if this is what your opinion is?
I appreciate the corrections. I appreciate them very much. They make the ordinance much clearer and they correct a factual error. So thank you very much.
Are there questions about the amendment? Okay, let's go ahead and go to public comment, specifically about Amendment 1 to Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02. If there's a member of the public who would like to make a comment, please make your way to the podium, and you would have 3 minutes. If you're on Zoom and would like to make a comment specifically about the amendment, you can use the Reactions tab to raise your hand or send a chat message to the host. I'll just give a minute for anybody to make themselves known. Has anybody raised their hand on Zoom? There are no hands raised. Okay, seeing nobody here in chambers, comes back to council. Anybody want to make an additional statement about Amendment 1 to Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02? I'll just say thank you to Councilmember Piedmont Smith for picking up on those errors and for making those clarifications. And then will the clerk please call the roll on Amendment 1 to Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02?
Councilmember Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg?
Yes.
Daley? Whoop, nope, sorry, take it back. Zulik?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
And Rallo?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. That brings us back to discussion on Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02 as amended. So are there councilmember questions on this original ordinance? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to the public. If a member of the public would like to make a comment about Appropriation Ordinance 2025-02 as amended, if you're in chambers, you can make your way to the podium and you will have up to 3 minutes. If you're online, please raise your hand using the Reactions tab or send a chat message to the host. And I'll just give it another minute to see if anybody's chatty about this ordinance this evening. Looks like we have one taker in chambers. Please sign in, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Hi there, my name is Marissa Parscott. I'm a program specialist with Community and Family Resources. And I just want to thank you for finding a different funding source and allowing us to use the opioid settlement fund for this grant. It's really important to a lot of our nonprofit organizations who help folks overcoming opioid use disorder and homelessness, and I know that they're grateful that we'll be able to offer this grant again in the 2025 grant cycle. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other comments in chambers? Is there anybody who's raised their hand on Zoom?
No hands are raised.
Okay, thank you. That brings us back to council. Did anybody think of any questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, I guess I do have a question. Since only $50,000 will be in the unrestricted fund, given the common applicants that you received, do you think that the needs will be covered by the most of the needs will be covered in the restricted fund?
Yes, I do. I think that even with the new eligibility requirements that will be in place because we are using opioid settlement money, I do believe that most of our applicants will still be covered under that 200,000. There are a few programs, specifically the Monroe County Humane Associations. They do a transient pet outreach. In 2024, we gave them around $12,000 toward that. That is an example of one that may not meet the eligibility requirements for the restricted opioid settlement, but would for the unrestricted.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I actually also thought of a question too, and I'm a little bit confused about my own system right now because I thought I'd written it down. I was just wondering what the opioid, and this might be a controller question, because with this new allocation out of the opioid resettlement fund, clarify for me what that fund is, where it comes from. I think my memory is right that like we get so many installments of that. And so like how much of that fund is being then utilized for these specific grants, and what was that money, say, used for last year that then it won't be used for this year? If you could address that category of thing, that would be helpful for me. Thank you.
The opioid settlement funds come from a statewide settlement that is managed by the Indiana Attorney General's office. We will be getting distributions from the AG's office for the next 15 years. I don't have the spreadsheet open right now of the exact amount that we're getting. We have gotten distributions since, I think, 2022. We have, let's see, let me go to your other question. What we used it for last year was we gave some money to Recovery Alliance. It hasn't been used much yet, and I think that these DTO grants is a great use of this money, that it really gets to the heart of what this funding is supposed to be used for. And we do not have very much money in the unrestricted fund, and we have about $800,000 in the restricted fund, so we do have plenty more money to appropriate to other opioid abuse disorder kind of services.
Thank you, that addresses my curiosity about that. Any other questions? Any council member comments about appropriation ordinance 2025-02? Councilmember Piedmont Smith, as amended.
I just want to thank Ms. Parscott and the people at CFRD who facilitate those grants. I think they do make a meaningful contribution to our downtown safety and the well-being of unhoused populations in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council member comments? I'll just say that there's been a couple of starts and stops with funding these outreach grants for fiscal year 2025, and I'm glad that we've landed on a funding source that seems to be a really good fit. So unless there's another comment coming from somewhere, will the clerk please call the roll on appropriation ordinance 2025-02 as amended?
Strasburg?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That passes with a vote of 5-0. Next, Councilmember Zulik. Thank you.
Thank you. I move ordinance 2025-08 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to read ordinance 2025-08. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2025-08, an ordinance reestablishing cumulative capital development fund. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance reauthorizes the Municipal Cumulative Capital Development Fund for taxes assessed in year 2025 and payable in year 2026, and authorizes collection of property tax at the rate of .05 or 5 cents per $100 of valuation. The fund may be used for the purposes set out in Indiana Code 36-915.5 and the following.
I move ordinance 2025-08 be adopted.
Thank you. It looks like we have Controller McClellan again for presentation.
Controller McClellan. This is an ordinance that for a very long time was considered a housekeeping ordinance. The City Council established the Cumulative Capital Development Fund in 1984. It had to be reestablished by the council every 3 years at the rate that the council wished to reestablish it at. The maximum rate is the rate that we established it at for many years. The last time this housekeeping ordinance was passed was in 2018, and the rate was passed at 0.05%. The fund should have been reestablished in 2021, and it was not, and so the rate defaulted to 0.0477. That's 0.03% less than we should have gotten. This fund is used by Public Works for street repair and maintenance. In the 2025 levy, the fund is raising $2.63 million. If we had reestablished last year at 0.05, we would have gone from 2.63 million to 2.76 million. That's a difference of $126,999. So we are talking about raising the rate back to 0.05. That's a change of 0.03. No, I'm kidding. It's late. It's not even a change of 0.03. It's like a change of 0.003%. And we're talking about a total of $126,998. That's how much money we're not receiving that we should have received. That's how much money we could be receiving. That's the impact to the taxpayer. It is a very small amount, but I feel like we should reestablish this fund. I'm asking you to reestablish this fund at the maximum rate.
Thank you. Councilmember questions? Looks like we can start with Councilmember Asari.
Thank you. Could you help us just let us know what that very small amount is, the impact on the taxpayer?
About $127,000 on the taxpayer. If it's
so you said it's 0.003, 0.003 change.
I'm thinking about dividing $127,000 by our population.
Sure.
Like if every single person paid, and it's a little bit more than that.
But it's on property assessed value, no?
Yeah, it's on assessed value, but it'd be like a little over a penny a person.
Right. But for a home, it's how to assess value.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, assess value it would be a 0.003 per $100. Is that how it works? Or?
Let's say your assessed value is on your home is $100,000, and then I have my little calculator up here. Then you multiply it by, you have to go 0.0003. $30
on an $100 property, is that?
Yeah, $100,000 assessed value.
So like for
that
most.
Doesn't even seem right.
No, that's not
yeah, that's not
so,
right. It's too much. That's too much. Let me get my Excel sheet out here.
I think the number is like $6, but I just wanted to confirm. But
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not doing this correctly on the fly.
No. Sorry. I should have.
That's okay.
Let you know I would ask that question.
Well, I've gone through this math too, actually.
Yeah,
so
go
let's
ahead.
talk
I think
through
useful.
this math for clarification.
Because this is a hearing, it is useful to say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Controller McClellan. So our current rate for this is 0.0477 per $100 of assessed value. So that's $4 0.77 cents, so fewer than 5 cents per $100. And so that we're talking about increasing it to 5 cents per $100, which means it's actually an increase of less than a quarter of a penny per $100.
Yes.
So at that calculation, if we take 0.0023 times, I did a $400,000 house, so if your house is worth $400,000, then you would end up paying 920 pennies, which is $9.20 more
I got the
per
nine,
year
yeah.
for your tax bill. So once again, as long as I talked through that math right, and nobody's gonna quibble with that, and I'm open to quibbling, by the way, if your house is worth $400,000, then you're paying an additional $9.20 per year for your property taxes with this proposal. $9.20. Is that what you get to?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Councilmember, sorry, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then can we just specify again as well what that additional roughly $150,000 is used for?
Roughly $127,000 used for road and street repair.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Are there other questions for the controller? I have one. So this is really, in some ways, an insubstantial amount for the taxpayer, but it's also then unsubstantial in terms of like our city budget. So, like, what is that additional $100 and something thousand going to do in terms of, I mean,
I would, street and road repair is so critically underfunded that I would argue that Public Works would absolutely take every penny that they could to fill potholes and make repairs to our streets, that this is not unsubstantial to them at all.
okay, thank you. Other questions before we go to public comment? All right. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I just wanted to confirm, and I don't mean to say this to call you out or anything, but there, in our packet, we did have a notice to taxpayers that was said that the public hearing would be on March 26th.
Yeah.
I understand that that was not the notice that was mailed out.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I meant to just, for the public record, say that that notice, I had made a draft ahead of time, and that thinking that this meeting would be, that would be the meeting date. That is not the notice that was sent to the paper. I checked the affidavit. It was advertised for this date, and I do apologize for getting that incorrect document in your packet. Yeah, I hate it when I do that.
Just wanted to clarify for
Thank you.
the public. Thank you.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
And actually, I'm sorry, it's very important that we get those things correct, because this, establishing this fund rate is it's a very important legal process, and I have to document all of the steps that we go through to the DLGF to make this change. And that notice has to be right, so it is important that we talk about that.
Great, thank you. And on that note, we'll move to public comment and also acknowledge that this serves as the public hearing for this rate change. So if anybody would like to make a public comment regarding Ordinance 2025-08, please make your way to the podium, and you would have up to 3 minutes. If you are on Zoom, please use the reactions tab to raise your hand. I feel like I've said that about 9 times today. Or you can send a chat message to the host. I don't see anybody moving in chambers right now, but we'll just give it a minute to see if anybody decides that they would like to comment on this. I don't see anybody moving in chambers, and I see staff shaking their heads, so that leads me to believe there's nobody on Zoom wishing to make a comment, so we'll move back to council members. Are there any council members who would like to ask additional questions or make a comment on Ordinance 2025-08? Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you. I'm in support of this. I don't have any quarrel with it whatsoever. This is a good move, actually. Now, $120,000 will fill some potholes. It's not going to really result in much in the way of substantial paving. And I thought I would just add that I have a concern, and it's a growing concern, about street maintenance. It's just anecdotal, but what I observe is that many streets are crumbling and in need of repair. We used to have a public works schedule of a 20-year cycle of paving where every street would be repaved every 20 years. That can't possibly be happening at this point. I don't mean this as a criticism. I just mean as an observation that we should, I think, pay attention to this. It's one of the fundamentals, I think, of just public works. And also I'm reminded that, you know, as we go forward and approve new developments that are going to add more people and potentially more roads, we should aim for a concurrency of the maintenance and the capacity of the facilities that we have before we add more. That's something that we always seem to be playing catch up. I think it's very common for every city to do this, many cities to do this, but it seems to be catching up with us, and I think that we need to bring attention to that very fundamental service that we provide taxpayers in the community, that is good roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Asari.
I'd just like to, second what Councilman Barallo just said. I know during our budget hearing this last year, we asked a lot of questions around deferred maintenance, and one of the answers that we got was that we need something like $20 million, I think, toward deferred maintenance. And I think this year, as we have much more lead time on budget construction and we're thinking about outcomes, I really, really share that needs to be one of our top priorities, which is making sure that we're dealing with our infrastructure. I also recently found out, and I just think that, maybe the council members who have been here, in Councilman Barallo's case forever, but who have been here for a long time, would know this better. But I recently found out that Public Works, was it 2 years ago, funded a study to actually assess, the state of all of our roads, which actually score them, right, with LiDAR and all of that. And so we have the data, I think, and I know that Councilmember Stossberg's partner has also done a lot of work in this space. So I think we have the data, we have the approaches, I think we have the will to do that. So I share that, and I think the residents of Bloomington, that's the thing, that knowing right now that we're, raising a very small amount of taxes to do something that it matters, but I do think moving forward we want to make sure that we're putting budget toward this as well. So very much share that position.
Thank you. Other council member comments?
Can I just add?
Sure.
It's a good segue. We're going into a reference, we're referring to council committees, and among them are budgeting and fiscal concerns, and so this is something that we should focus on. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Other council member comments? I'll just also say Councilmember Asari's comments about the LiDAR study made me think about sidewalks, because we've had, that's also another really essential infrastructure that has kind of been chronically underfunded in the city, and we get a lot of constituent comments and complaints about sidewalks and snow on sidewalks and maintenance on sidewalks, and figuring out how to do that in the best way that we can do that. And so the LiDAR study also studied sidewalks, and I have been following up with Director Wason about that, and there is work happening right now in terms of the city staff level to try to create a sidewalk plan in the same way that we have other plans in terms of city goals. And so I just wanted to say that out loud, that is something that I've been communicating about with, and I think that other members have also been communicating about that, and that it is work that is ongoing within the city to try to address that essential infrastructure. So unless there are other comments, Councilmember Asari.
Just also very briefly, I mean, so building off of, but I think to that exact same point, this is a very great example of what a strong outcome would look like in our new budget, that you say, we want to see our LiDAR score go from a 60 to a 70, as an example, within this budget cycle. So, and then asking the question, well, what would it cost to do that? Or choosing a particular area of the city, et cetera. So I just really love that example, and glad that we have the opportunity to talk about this.
Any other last comments? Great. Will the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 2025-08?
Councilmember Zulik?
Yes.
Asari?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
There we are.
Thank you. That passes 5-0. Moving on to our last piece of legislation this evening. Councilmember Zulik.
I'm sorry. I'm really bad at this. I move Resolution 2025-04 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to read Resolution 2025-04. Everybody in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Resolution 2025-04 to dissolve one standing committee and establish one standing committee of the Common Council. The synopsis is as follows. This resolution is sponsored by Councilmember Flaherty and Councilmember Piedmont Smith, and it dissolves the Climate Action and Resilience Committee and establishes the Committee on Council Processes as a standing committee of the Council. It also repeals Section 5 of Resolution 22-02 and Section 9 of Ordinance 1305 and states that council work sessions are considered meetings of the full council.
Thank you.
I move Resolution 2025-04 be adopted.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith, would you like to present this as one of the co-sponsors?
Sure. Let me get there. In January, we had a deliberation session here in council chambers, and we talked about that the Climate Action and Resilience Committee had kind of run its course as far as being a useful tool for the council to make sure that we take action towards climate resiliency and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There are other entities that have been formed since that standing committee was created that are carrying on the work. And the committee had trouble last year in finding time to meet with 4 council members, and they didn't really feel like they were making a lot of progress as far as legislative portions of the Climate Action Plan goals, and those initiatives could probably better be done by 1 or 2 council members working with staff. Councilmember Flaherty was the chair of the Climate Action Resilience Committee, and he has submitted more details in his memo. As far as the standing committee, the status of the Committee on Council Processes, moving that from a special committee to a standing committee. I can speak with more knowledge about that because I've been the chair of that special committee for over a year. And we always have a lot on our agenda. There's a lot of work to do in this area to make our council processes more accessible, more meaningful, and to serve the public better through our processes. And so we do request that that become a standing committee so it doesn't have to be renewed every year. And then the last part of this resolution corrects part of our municipal code where we said that a quorum isn't needed for council work sessions. Well, it turns out a work session is not defined anywhere in Indiana code. A meeting is a meeting, and we can't have a meeting without a quorum, so we took that out with this resolution as well.
Thank you. I also want to point out that a revised Resolution 2025-04 went out in the packet addendum today, since resolutions are only read once. The reading tonight assumes that we are discussing the resolution that went out in the packet addendum today. I don't know if everybody got a chance to see that. It modifies a word from citizens to residents and then slightly changes the Section 2 wording of the Committee on Council Processes. Councilmember Piedmont Smith, would you like to go into more detail about the Section 2 change?
Unfortunately, I did not check with the city clerk, and that is my mistake when writing Section 2. And so I spoke with the city clerk this afternoon, who pointed out that the way it was originally written kind of duplicates the job of the new deputy clerk for communications and outreach, which is a job that we actually asked her to include in her office. So we discussed it and decided to revise to Section 2, subsection B of this resolution so that we don't duplicate what that clerk does.
Thank you. Are there councilmember questions for the sponsor? Councilmember Rallo.
Well, I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway, and that is of the sponsor, that for people who are wondering about our commitment to climate and reducing greenhouse gases, this doesn't lessen that. It's just that we find it elsewhere in other boards and commissions and the administration and so forth. Do you want to add anything more to that, or?
I think that's a good point. We have other avenues. We have a climate action team here within the city of Bloomington. We have Project 46, where Monroe County, Brown County, and Bartholomew County, and the cities in those counties work together on climate action. Of course, the Transportation Commission is going to have council members serving on it, and transportation is a big area of climate action that we've focused on. We have a fiscal committee now in the council that will help focus on funding our priorities, as in the Climate Action Plan and our other plans. And the work of the Commission on Sustainability also continues, and they also monitor implementation of our plans as far as sustainability and climate action. So it's not that we're not lessening our focus on this very important existential issue of climate action and resilience in the face of climate change. We just feel like there are enough other venues for that now that this particular commission is not needed.
Thank you. Are there other questions? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and go to the public. If you are a member of the public interested in making a comment on Resolution 2025-04, please make your way to the podium, state your name for the record, sign in, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes. If you are on Zoom this evening, you can use the Reactions tab to raise your hand or send a chat message to the host. And let's go ahead and start here in Chambers. Thank you.
Council members. My comments are only about Section 2 of this resolution, and I will be brief. I'm in favor, by the way, of this resolution, of the section number 2, the establishment of the Committee of Council Processes. And I want, sir, I don't think you stated your name. Terry Amsler. I'm sorry. I thought I said it. I'm sorry. I just want to make a couple comments about the purposes, if I could, under that item, Section 2. The only edit I would suggest is only one. The others are brief comments. I think under Purpose A, which reads the internal processes and procedures of the council and how the work of the council can be more accessible, equitable, efficient, and transparent. Those are all good words. You might add at the end, and informed. I think you're missing something in there, really, about that adds to what this can be about a little bit. So that's my only edit suggestion. Now, on item B rather, where it says, it also talks about still purposes, ways to optimize interaction between resident boards and commissions and the council. One of the spokespeople earlier for one of the reports that were given by a commission referenced something, I forget who it was, my apologies, referenced something about the learning or information sharing among boards and commissions. And that was interesting to me, actually, given the larger purposes of which this is all about. And I'm not suggesting language, I'm not sure it's essential. But there's not just the information, perhaps, of some attention between the council and the boards and commissions, but what can be supportive of information among councils. So that's just a random thought. The second part of that item has to do with, in collaboration with the city clerk and with the designee, and this has been talked to, and I'm in favor of the relationship with the clerk's office. This is a random kind of thought. I know that the public engagement director position of the city has been, the job description has been redesigned. The job is out. There are people, I think, being interviewed, 60, 70 of them, I think, what I've heard secondhand. And I think there's some relevance of that position, anyway, as I understand it, and I'm not close to this, relevant to some of the interests in what you're trying to do here. So I'm just saying I'm interested in the collaborative element of all of this going forward across the administrative and the legislative. And just about lastly, random thought, as you know, I've followed some of the consensus building related work and policies and practices of the council. And your third purpose is specific questions related to council processes that are brought to the committee by the full council. It strikes me that maybe in some appropriate way, shape, or form, this is another arena which goes to local self-governance, by the way, about and it's 3 minutes you're waving at me, but I think there's maybe a relationship to consensus building, public involvement in how some information comes to this committee.
Thank you very much for your comment. Are there any commenters on Zoom right now who have raised their hand? No. Okay, thank you. Let's go next in chambers. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Justin Vassell. Good evening. So I wanted to speak about the dissolving of the Climate Action and Resilience Committee. So as some of you know, I'm the chair of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, and at a recent BCOS working session, there was some informal discussion amongst the commissioners about this, and there was some concern among them. We didn't have any sort of formal vote on that, though, so I'm here just speaking tonight in my capacity as an individual resident, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. I wanted to start by saying that I appreciate Councilmember Flaherty's memo reflecting on the accomplishments and evolution of that committee. It's done a lot of good work in helping to develop the climate action plan and to providing support for it, and to creating the initial accountability streams to support it. So those are significant achievements, and but of course committees can sometimes outlive their usefulness, and it's time for a restructure. The thing that I worry about is dissolving this committee without first establishing clear alternatives for council level oversight of our climate commitments. So without a formal council structure, I think we risk creating a governance gap where implementation of the climate action plan becomes primarily an administrative function with insufficient legislative oversight. So for example, the city's climate action dashboard is a really wonderful resource. You can learn a lot about what the city is doing to implement the CAP and how Bloomingtonians can do their part in contributing to that, but it lacks clear correlation to specific CAP targets and timelines, which makes it difficult to actually track that progress. So just as a quick example, goal EB1 in the CAP is to increase distributed renewable energy to 250,000 megawatt hours of total generation annually by 2030. The metrics on the dashboard for that tell us about the success of various green energy programs, but they don't tell us how we're progressing towards that specific measurable goal. How much have we increased renewable energy generation so far? Are we on track to meet the 2030 deadline, or are we falling behind? It's hard to tell. A dashboard can tell us where we've been, but oversight ensures that we arrive where we're promising to go. It also reminds me of Bloomington's Sustainability Action Plan, which was in place for a 5-year period up to 2022. I have yet to find any sort of report that actually details which measurable goals were achieved and which were missed. So I would encourage the council, while dissolving this committee, to also think about how alternative mechanisms could be established for council engagement on these climate issues, whatever that might look like, whether it's periodic updates during regular council sessions with formal reporting requirements, or some sort of structured annual review process for CAP implementation with specific metrics tied to our original comments. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to make a comment? Okay, great. Let's continue here in chambers. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Madam President. This is Christopher Imji from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. Speaking in support of this resolution tonight, the Climate Action Committee can be, the purposes of that I don't think can be questioned. But when a committee doesn't meet, I think its time has come and gone. It's a matter of council bandwidth as well, and I think you always have to remember of that. I think there's an IU colleague, I won't name this person, but always says you can't be a mile wide and an inch deep. And this is a case where this is, maybe should have probably happened a year ago. Now, it was a few weeks ago, I was at the commissioners meeting, and they changed the environmental committee there to the resilience committee, which I think was a move, and I think we supported that. And I also talked about collaboration with the county. This is not just a Bloomington issue. This is our whole community. And resiliency, when we deal with floods in the spring and droughts every fall, it is a resilience issue, and I think it's where, much like the convention center, I'd like to see some collaboration on. I think where there's really a lot of territory to be there. When it comes to council processes, I think that is a good move in the right direction. I've been impressed with that committee and sort of moving to a more efficient process, looking into integrating some of the commissions and boards and possibly sunsetting a few of those as well. So support this resolution. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have another commenter in chambers. Please sign in, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Steve Olin. I speak in support of this resolution as well, although there's some interesting points, I think, to relate. It's okay to dissolve a committee when its use has passed. That's the same is true with boards and commissions. I'm constantly reminded of the former Community and Family Resource Commission, which became obviated by the establishment of a Community and Family Resources Department. And so that commission evolved into the Commission on the Status of Children and Youth. So if, whether because of bandwidth or what have you, the council or that other bodies have emerged to pick up the slack, it's fine to retire a committee. But I mean, Mr. Vassal is right. There is the question of oversight. The new making the committee and council processes permanent is very welcome. In a way, it's kind of a backdoor committee on committees. So I'm like, yes, you got really meta there. But the no alternative mechanism is necessary to do oversight for what Mr. Vassal is talking about. That is what a committee is supposed to do, is oversight. The council designates certain people to be point people on behalf of the council on a given issue. Because right now, with nobody as a point person, then the council as a whole is responsible and nobody's responsible. And that's how we got for example, parking garages at 7th Street and Morton Street that were built in 2001 and 2003 that were called for in the ordinance to have rates that raise every 3 years, and the council simply shrugged it off, abandoned it. There was just, they passed the ordinance and forgot about it. somebody needs to be checking. And if that requires more staff, then fine. If the council is running out of bandwidth and they need to hire more people to help them do the research they need to make good decisions, then that's fine. But subdividing into more than just, I mean, I hope that the committee and council processes will take this idea and run with it, that start exploring a minimal set of other standing committees that would take point on all the issues of our day, starting perhaps with a finance or budget committee. Finally, work sessions were something we adopted as council in the late teens, just to get information, just to set up information before a meeting to find out what would council members want to see in order for a presenter to be fully prepared. They were never meant to make decisions or to be full meetings of council. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference to you, but you should take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in chambers wish to make a comment? And has anybody raised their hand on Zoom?
No.
All right, seeing no more, let's come back to council. Are there additional questions? Seeing none, are there council member comments? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I totally agree with Mr. Vassal, and I'm glad that he stayed and stuck around to make his comment, that we do need oversight over implementation of the Climate Action Plan. And I also agree with Mr. Volan that we need better oversight of some of our own legislation that we pass and then say, oh, well, we're going to, in this legislation it says every 3 years we do this and that, and then we forget about it. So for the former, I would say, yes, we at a minimum should have an annual report from the Assistant Director for Sustainability on Climate Action Plan goals. And for the latter, I think that we, council leadership maybe, or perhaps it is the Committee on Council Processes could have, as we're drawing up, as some of my colleagues are already working on administrative manual, that part of it is, we record in a certain place things that we need to follow up on related to legislation we pass. So that needs to be more systematic. So I appreciate those comments, and I would appreciate everybody's support for this resolution.
Thank you. Councilmember Asari.
Mr. Vassal's one of the comments, part of the comment anyways, and sort of seconding what my colleague has just shared, that you mentioned us not dissolving this committee before we've done the other. I think that though I also agree that we need to set up something else. I mean, the reality is that group wasn't meeting, and so I think, not dissolving it is, it's a meaningless action in many ways, right? So, but I share, I think, with all my other colleagues, the need to think very carefully and quickly about how we do this moving forward, and would love your input on what that might look like.
Thank you. Are there other council member comments? Councilmember Rallo.
This has been a good discussion. I'm in favor of this ordinance change. I think that we are spread thin quite a lot, and I think that we need to be judicious about how we focus our attention. I think there is a lot being done focusing on climate in this community. To respond to this idea that the climate crisis is really a subset of a bigger problem, and that is humanity's pressing on the boundaries, planetary boundaries, which there are many. It's not just climate. There's a lot of ways in which we're exceeding carrying capacity. And so I think that needs a rethinking of sustainability. We're all familiar with the Venn diagram of the three circles of the social component, the environment, and the economy, and aiming for a synthesis, but it would be better to think of it, I think, in a nested model where the environment is essentially the parent system and then society has to live within the environment, and the economy functions within society for a certain purpose, and that is for human well-being, not just for billionaires to increase wealth and so forth. But on a local level, that means protecting our biocapacity of our county, the ability to produce materials and absorb waste. What we can't do, we have to import. Clearly, everybody can't import. There has to be some that are producing more than others in order for us to survive. And so we ought to be really reflecting on preserving nature services, habitat, and farmland, and so forth, which are components of that biocapacity. So I think, just to say that I think I'm satisfied that, well, let me also respond to Mr. Vassal's very well considered remarks that we should have probably a regular basis for tapping into the sustainability coordinator's progress and what the city has been doing. Maybe this takes the form of deliberative sessions where we can bring the community in, get a report, and discuss where we are in terms of the climate action plan. But there is a lot going on addressing that. But I think I'll conclude there. Just to say that this is an evolving, I think, process, and I think that we need to adapt as we go forward, but of course never losing sight of the mission to become a sustainable community. So that'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other council member comments before I make a comment? Okay, I'll go ahead and go. So first I want to say, I want to make really clear to this community that dissolving the Climate Action and Resilience Committee is not a deprioritization of climate-related goals, et cetera, et cetera. And I know other people have said that, and Councilmember Flaherty, sorry that he can't be here tonight. He could have, to really make this clear, he could have participated online, except we had an appropriation ordinance. And whenever there's an appropriation ordinance, you can only participate in person for the whole meeting. You can't have any virtual participation at all. So that is why he, as a co-sponsor, was not able to be here this evening. But this is not a deprioritization in any way, shape, or form for myself, and I don't think for Councilmember Flaherty or anybody else. I also want to make note that next week on the schedule, we should get a report about greenhouse gas emissions next week on the 12th. And so that kind of speaks somewhat to the continued oversight and continued monitoring of this. Secondly, in terms of that ongoing oversight, and I've actually thought about this as a member of the Climate Action and Resilience Committee last year, and then as council president this year, in terms of thinking well, if we dissolve this, how do we make sure that we still kind of demonstrate this commitment? And so there's a couple things I'll raise right now. There's reference to the internal climate team that the city has. There has been discussion of a council member officially being part of that team. I believe that Councilmember Flaherty has frequently, as chair of Climate Action and Resilience, attended those meetings. Similarly, the Project 46 was referenced as a regional collaborative project because, of course, climate change is not something that we as Bloomington, we can just think about our little bubble. No, it's way bigger than that, right? And so Project 46 starts to address these concepts from a regional perspective. Also, as chair of that committee, Councilmember Flaherty has been participating in Project 46 meetings. I represented him once last year when he was unable to make one of those meetings. That is a group that is kind of just starting to get going. There will, at some point, we as council will need to decide, as we appointed Councilmember Piedmont Smith to the internal clean team, related to the IDEM Clean Communities earlier this evening. We will also, as a council, need to officially appoint somebody to be involved with the internal team, to appoint somebody to be involved with Project 46. But right now, the default to that has been the chair of the Climate Action and Resilience Committee. So by dissolving it first, then we can look to those other places where there's been a default as the chair being representative. Now we go, okay, who wants to participate in this? Who has the bandwidth? Who has the interest? Who can make the meetings in terms of their schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that those were all the things that I wanted to make sure to say about that. And I also think that there's a lot of work to be done with regard to the Committee on Council Processes. So I don't want to lose the importance of that work and the establishment of that committee and thinking about the dissolution of climate action and resilience. But that's a really important step just in terms of efficiency and thinking about what we're doing and being, meta and mindful, as Mr. Fullen may have said, in terms of thinking about our committees and our commissions and just our structure and how it is that we do our business. So, are there any other council member comments before we move to a vote? Wonderful. Will the clerk please call the roll on Resolution 2025-04?
Asari?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That passes with a vote of 5-0. Lastly, we have moved on to our last period of public comment for this evening, the additional period of public comment for items not on the agenda, or as I mentioned earlier, if you have something that you want to comment on that was in a non-legislative part of the agenda, I would welcome those comments as well. Please make your way to the podium if you're in chambers, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. If you're on Zoom and would like to make a comment unrelated to legislation this evening, please use the reactions tab to raise your hand. Or send a chat message to the host. And I don't see anybody moving very quickly. I'll give people a minute to think about it, and people on Zoom a minute to find the reactions tab or to write out a comment. Just gonna drag on for another 10 seconds. Seeing no comments, we will move on to notes about council schedule. My note related to that is that I do want to hold a legislative, so our meeting next week is supposed to be a special deliberative session, and I would like to have a legislative session instead. So for that reason, Councilmember Zulik.
I move to cancel the council deliberation session on March 12th.
Thank you. Just for process, because that was on our schedule at the beginning of the year, we as council have to agree to cancel that deliberative session. Does anybody have any questions?
Replacing that
Yes.
with...
Can we do a roll call vote on this, or can we do a voice vote? Who knows?
You could do a voice vote.
Great. All those in favor of canceling the deliberative session next week, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now, as president, I would like to schedule a special legislative meeting for next week, March 12th at 6:30 here in Chambers, so that effectively replaces that special deliberation session. So the meeting next week will be a special legislative session. We will be discussing 2 resolutions related to requesting the Plan Commission make changes to the UDO. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I just wanted to announce 2 meetings, committee meetings next week. On Monday at 12:15 in the Allison Conference Room will be a meeting of the Committee on Council Processes. And then next Tuesday, March 11th, at 12 o'clock in the Kelly Conference Room will be a meeting of the Fiscal Committee of the Council. Those are also available via Zoom if you go to the Council website.
Great, thank you very much. Are there other notes on council's schedule? Fantastic. With that, I think that we are adjourned.